Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, May 18th. I'm Kelly McNicholas Curry. I'm the chair of the board. In the room with me is Vice Chair Patty Clapper. Our fellow commissioners, Greg Poshman, Steve Child, and Francie Jacober are joining us from home. And our first item today will be a meeting of the Board of Social Services. And we have our Human Services staff to join us. Before we turn it over to them for their presentation, can I request a motion from a board member to please convene the Board of Social Services?
So moved.
So moved.
Okay. I have Patty move, Greg second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, thank you, everyone. And with that, I will turn it over to Nan Sundin, who is our Director of Human Services. Hi, Nan.
Hi, thank you so much. I am going to use a PowerPoint, so before I do that, want to introduce the Human Services team, Chad Fedorowicz from Senior Services. Audrey Warner is our new finance analyst. Matt McGaugh from Adult and Family Services, very similar to Aspen Family Connections, but different. And Sam Lander-Casper from Economic Assistance. So I'm going to present my screen and hopefully it will go well. Let's hope. Let's see. I don't know why it does that, but anyway, can you all see the screen now?
Yep, looks good.
Okay. Now I just need to get, let's see. Okay, so a reminder that the Board of County Commissioners serves as the Board of Social Services. It's a statutory obligation, and your responsibility as the Board of Social Services is to oversee the expenditures of the department and the payrolls, which are direct client benefits. And within that, the Human Services Division is filled with the Departments of Economic Assistance, and they determine all eligibility for assistance programs. The Healthy Community Fund, which is dedicated property tax, which raises about $3 million for the social safety net, which is really health and human service nonprofits and agencies. Protective Services, which is prevention and intervention for child and adult protection. Senior Services, meals, program advocacy, and more. And Veteran Services, which is a mandatory service to help assist veterans with claims and resources. So we're going to welcome Audrey Warner for her first opportunity to take on the expenditures, and we're all here to help. So Audrey, when you're done with this slide, let me know when you want me to go to the next slide, and then we're going to ask the Board of Social Services to approve the first quarter expenditures. So this is all about really our January through March expenditures.
Thank you, Nan, for that introduction, and I look forward to my first meeting covering these expenditures. This particular update does cover the county's 2021 calendar year budget, and like Nan mentioned, today we're looking at the first quarter, which is January through March. I did want to say a reminder, however, our program allocations follow the state's fiscal year, which is July 2020 through June of 2021. So we're quickly approaching the end of our state fiscal year 21. Item of mention is our overall total programs. So in the first quarter of 2021, Human Services program expenditures are at 25%, which is right on track for budget. And we're also seeing program revenues at 27%, and that actually puts us in a surplus position to start the year, which is really good. TANF, if you look at that section, I'm not going to go through all of these sections, but one's of note. So TANF is one of note. If you look at TANF expenditures, those are around 31%, and the state and federal revenue are at 12%. So all of our staff salaries are fully budgeted in the Human Services Fund. However, the budget did not allocate out salaries and benefits to each program area. So the budget for TANF salaries and benefits is actually included in the administration and economic assistance area, but for some of those actual costs, they are charged to TANF. So that's
And
the
Audrey,
reason that
can I just
the
jump
TANF
in and
yes.
ask, can you
Yes.
can you explain acronyms when we run into them, please?
Sure. TANF is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families.
So that's a program that's really, in essence, a welfare to work program to help families who maybe need help with emergency expenses or basic cash assistance or other expenditures in order to support them working or finding work activities.
Thank you.
So that's why those expenditures are showing at a higher percentage than budget, is because they are actually in the administration and economic assistance area, but they're actually charged to that program. Another item of mention would be that for the first time with TANF and CCAP, we are in a position where we are not having to purchase TANF or CCAP dollars at this point, which is good for the department. Lastly, we just want to look at childcare, and we are just seeing that the expenditures are a little low here, and that's again due to childcare facility closures, or perhaps taking children to care less often due to fear of exposure in relation to the pandemic. And really, those are the only main items to note. So in conclusion, the budget versus actuals look really good so far. We'll continue to review and update the BOCC as the year progresses. And with that being said, I'd like to pause here and ask if there are any specific questions that can be addressed related to first quarter expenditures and revenues.
Okay, questions, and then I'll look for a motion to approve these. Greg?
Just wondering regarding the numbers that popped out first before I understood what they were the adult protection. I see state and federal revenue are at 44%, and then down below offsetting property and MV motor vehicle taxes, 48%. So those are on different schedules, I assume. But what will it look like if?
Oh, Greg, you're frozen. You might want to turn off your video. I know Greg was having trouble joining us at the beginning of the meeting, so.
Okay, can you now?
Yep.
Am I okay, or am I?
I think you're okay.
Just wondering about the 44%. 44% and then the 48%, meaning we've received almost half the funds, but we're only a quarter of the way through. Is that normal?
So I think a couple of things, and then Audrey, there's one more slide that just has the first quarter expenditures. We expect to be overspent in adult protection. We don't get enough allocation for that, but we, at the end of the year, we might get closed out with funds that are not spent in other counties for admin. So we're not so worried about that. We already budget to overspend our adult protection. And the other thing is property and vehicle taxes. I think it's a good sign that our revenues are higher than we anticipated. So that will be a revenue. If it keeps going up, good for us. That will help us with our adult protection overage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions on this chart? Francie?
Is that the fund that you explained to us recently where you can get that money from a different jurisdiction and then pay them back later?
Yeah, so when Audrey said we're not going to be buying child care dollars or TANF dollars, those are the dollars that we buy from counties. In those two programs, we're allowed to buy those.
Okay.
What I was talking about was at the end of the state fiscal year, at the end of June, the state will look at all the allocations, see who's overspent and underspent in areas not child care or TANF, like administration, adult protection. And in some places, they will make counties whole with counties that underspent.
Oh, I see.
And so that's called closeout, Francie. I understand the terms sound the same. There's also a program called mitigation, and that's where we submit to the state to get bailed out on our child welfare over expenditures. And Matt is in process of making application now. What you're seeing is only January to March, but we always have to be working July to June with the state allocations, with the state fiscal year. It's complicated, but that's how we think in human services.
Uh-huh. Okay, thank you, Nan.
Yeah.
Other questions for Audrey or Nan? Okay, Audrey, you want to go over this slide?
So this slide is just recapping the first quarter total expenditures by program area, and this is where we will ask the board to approve the payroll.
The expenditures, right? Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, whoops, that's a typo there.
That's okay.
Sorry, that's my fault.
So I'll look for a motion
Good
to
catch.
approve the first quarter expenditures.
So moved.
Thank you, Patty.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Any further questions or discussion? Francie?
I have a question about the administration and economic assistance.
Mm-hmm.
What do those two incorporate? They sound really different.
Yeah, it's really, it's an allocation that's called administration, Francie. And so we try to clarify it for you because it pays, like, for my time as an administrator in human services, specifically for the mandatory services. But then it also covers some of our economic assistance programs that are not CCAP or TANF or LEAP. So food assistance, all of the staff that provide service under here are in economic assistance. Sam's position is under here. So it's a funny combination of administrating the mandatory services and some direct services.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, any further questions or discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you all.
Aye.
Thanks for catching that typo, and congratulations, Audrey, on your first presentation.
Good job, Audrey.
Thank you.
I know, we know you're not scary commissioners, but new people don't know that, so.
It was, Dan, it was written correctly in the packet.
Yeah.
Thank you, yeah, I'm sorry, when I made the slideshow, I missed that, thank you so much. Okay, so now Sam is gonna talk about the payrolls, which are direct service, direct benefits to clients.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Lander-Casper. I manage the Economic Assistance Department for Pickens County. So typically in the first quarter, particularly since there aren't a lot of, there's no previous information to go off of with preceding quarters, we like to compare the first quarter to the 2 years preceding 2021. So just to see if we can find any trends. And there are, in this case, 4 program areas where we see some differences in spending from the prior years, particularly the Child Care Assistance Program. Audrey already called that out. We are seeing lower expenditures there. We can't exactly identify what that is. Over the course of the last year with the pandemic, we've seen there's a number of things that can influence the spending in that program, from provider shutdowns, school closures, parents that are maybe hesitant to take their kids back into care for fear of exposure. So we are hoping to see those expenditures go back up as folks get back to work and, you know, vaccines start to help with lower transmission of COVID. We also see higher utilization of the Low Income Energy Assistance Program, known as LEAP. We were expecting this. A lot of folks who are still struggling with their financial situation are utilizing this program to help pay their heating costs. Additionally, LEAP has also extended the season, which typically ends in April, through the end of May, and will likely be extending it through June as well. Another area where we're seeing increased expenditures through this program is through the domestic water program. So anyone who has applied for LEAP and been found eligible that has a water bill, meaning with a local water provider for domestic water, LEAP will automatically go in and pay that for them without any extra work on their part. So that was a really great aspect of the program that they augmented in this past year. And especially up here, folks have some pretty high water costs, so that could be pretty helpful. The Colorado Works spending, which is TANF, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, known as Colorado Works here, is quite low in the first quarter, where we only saw, I believe it was, 3 applications in this first quarter. That is unusually low. We're not sure exactly why that's happening. It could be that folks have been receiving assistance through other programs, as a lot of our partners are offering assistance to households with families. Otherwise, there are also some folks who have already utilized their benefits for this year and won't be able to get assistance on that program. So those could be reasons why we're seeing decreased utilization of that program. And then finally, we have the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. These expenditures in the first quarter are higher. However, I did want to indicate that in March, we did see the expenditures go back down to what we had seen in previous years. However, we do expect to see that go back up because what the SNAP program is doing right now is they're issuing the benefits that people would normally be eligible for, and then basically on a month-by-month basis, they are approving additional benefits to help with COVID relief. So we tend to see an initial issuance early in the month, followed up with some additional benefits on a month-to-month basis. So we'll likely see that issuance go up a bit more, and that is expected to continue through the end of June 2021. Are there any questions on any of these payrolls?
Francie.
If you have, if you don't use up all the funds, like the one that you were talking about for your need, is that the child care one for one, and then what was the other one, the Colorado Works? Does that affect how much you'll get the next year? In other words, is 1 year's allocation dependent on the expenditures from the year before?
It does influence that, and we've actually built up our allocations in both of these programs by overutilization over the years. It wouldn't likely impact it just because of 1 year if we are underspent. However, one good thing with the TANF Colorado Works program is that we have a lot of flexibility with that funding. And, as we see that we're a little slow on the expenditures of the regular benefits, we're looking at other ways we can utilize those funds to work with our community. So one way we're doing that is we are contracting with some of our local summer camp providers to help fund additional positions that can provide assistance to low-income families and increase slots available in those programs. And we are also working with the city of Aspen and their summer camp program to help pay some of the tuition for low-income families and children who would be attending those programs. So at the end of the year, I think we'll have spent down our allocation completely.
Francie, you're muted.
Those are really cool that you're doing that with the summer camps. Really nice.
Other
Thank
questions?
you. And of course, one thing that you don't see on this list is Medicaid, because it's not one of the programs where people get direct benefits, but it is a program that Sam's team manages the eligibility for the application. So I think in the third quarter, it would be helpful, Sam, if we could bring in some caseload numbers. And I think we also know how much money these programs bring in to the community.
Yeah, I can tell you currently with Medicaid, we're sitting right around 1,800 individuals receiving Medicaid, which is significantly higher. It's gone up from around 1,600 to 1,650 at the end of 2019. So, and if I recall correctly, the last time I saw Medicaid expenditures annually was approximately $8 million in Pickton County, although I believe 1.5 or 1.7 was kind of the direct expenditures at local hospitals and pharmacies and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And Sam, a concern from prior years was the gap between folks that we saw receiving like SNAP benefits who were not signed up for Medicaid. Are you seeing that gap closing?
Not to the extent that we would like. Of course, with COVID, our SNAP caseload increased by over 100%. So we did see a lot more folks get enrolled in SNAP. We're starting to see that dip, whereas Medicaid continues to go up. We do have some options we're going to work on moving forward to reach out to those folks directly. We have a technician who is actually brought on as a temporary specialist throughout the year, who's going to be, they've been trained to take electronic applications and telephonic signatures for the SNAP program. So we're going to be having them reach out directly to these folks who are what we call eligible but not enrolled, meaning they are enrolled in Medicaid but aren't receiving SNAP, even though those programs have very similar income limits. So this person will be reaching out to those folks directly to ask if they would like to enroll in the SNAP program. And then the beauty of it is that they have the ability to take that application over the phone, complete the interview, and get the electronic signature. So those folks wouldn't even have to come into the office. They don't have to fill out an application. It'd make the whole process a lot easier. And so if we look at our current caseloads, you know, that would be, I mean, we have 1,800 people on Medicaid and around 400 on SNAP. So, you know, there's 1,400 folks, not sure how many households that is, that might possibly be eligible for SNAP that we need to see if we can get them connected with the program.
Thank you for that information. Okay, any other questions for Sam on the payrolls? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve the first quarter payrolls.
To approve the first quarter payrolls.
Thank you, Steve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Greg. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Thanks, Sam.
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
So per our formula for meeting and following the formula of our memo, we like to update you on policy changes, program changes, any specific initiatives, any contracts that I've signed on your behalf. And so we're going to start with a few policy changes or updates. And I think, Chad, were you the one to talk about the CAPS check?
Then this one is me.
Oh, Matt, sorry.
Hello, I'm Matt McGon. I manage our adult and family services for Pickton County. I just have a few updates and some changes in legislation. The first bullet point here is related to adult protection services. And basically, this is just new legislation to ensure more protection for at-risk adults who may be involved in a court hearing where there could be a decision made for a guardianship or a conservatorship. Basically, the district and probate courts who oversee these cases are now required to ask for a background check on these people to make sure that there hasn't been any past substantiated mistreatment of adults. And so, again, just a change in legislation, a new requirement for our staff to be responsive and to do these background checks on a day-to-day. Another key requirement from this bill will be that our adult protection cases that involve anyone who works for a licensed facility that serves adults, if we have any substantiated abuse or neglect, we're supposed to report that to DORA now, the regulation agency for some of these licensed facilities. And so there's just a few added requirements for our staff, and again, it's based on trying to ensure more protection for at-risk adults. That's all I had for that update. Is there any questions on that?
Okay, I'm not seeing any, Matt. Thank you.
Okay. The next bullet point is around child welfare services, and this is for Family First Services Prevention Act. A reminder, this is new legislation that was passed in 2018, won't be implemented in Colorado until October of 21. So October of this year, we're preparing for the implementation. And the update I'm giving you today is around some of our local efforts to expand some evidence-based practices. The premises of Families First is really to increase capacities on a local level to serve families with quality services so that we can reduce children being placed out of the home, out of their communities, and most importantly, being served in congregate care settings when it's not appropriate. And what I mean is more of like a residential placement, not like a family, not a family-like setting. And so right now as a region, we're trying to look at how we can expand some of the identified evidence-based services. And two of those that we're looking at is multi-systemic therapy and family functional therapy. And right now, locally, we don't have any providers that provide these services. And so with Family First, they've identified these as evidence-based, which means that we know they help families, and we can also then draw down federal funding to reimburse for these services. So there's incentives to try to expand these evidence-based services. Our efforts right now include writing a grant for some transitional funds from Family First to try to support an agency called the Savio House. They provide some of these evidence-based services in the Mid-Mountain region and the Front Range, and have talked with us about expanding those services to Garfield, Eagle, and Pickens County. And so we're writing a regional grant right now to try to expand some of those services. It's just part of our local effort as we we're preparing for the implementation of Family First. And later I'll talk a little bit more about some of our efforts to expand some of our foster care services as well, as there's a big push to have more therapeutic and trauma-informed placements across the state. We'll be working regionally as well to look at some of that. So that was pretty specific update around our efforts with Families First. I'm wondering if there's any general questions or any comments on that.
Any questions for Matt on that? No, I appreciate the update. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I plan to provide a more extensive overview, big picture of what all this means once everything is in place as we get closer to October and implementation.
Great. Thank you.
I will, the next bullet point I will talk about, I'm Chad Fedowitz, the manager of senior services. This bullet point, House Bill 1122, the first responder interactions, persons with disabilities, is a House bill that I haven't checked today, but I believe it's still in a Senate committee. that's talking about training, required training for first responders and law enforcement after a revision around interacting with people with disabilities, and also another adjustment to that bill is individuals living with Alzheimer's disease. That was one reason why I wanted to kind of just bring it to the attention. I think it could be really impactful if it passes through the Senate, and it seems to have rather overwhelming support. And in your packet, attachment A is just a short one page from the Alzheimer's Association around the importance of first responders and law enforcement having some, not a huge amount or overwhelming amount, but some training around interacting with individuals that have some type of cognitive disability or cognitive decline, such as Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementias. So I just wanted to bring it up. I haven't necessarily done a lot of focus on bills or other statewide initiatives. I'm trying to get a little more of a handle on that. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention. And if you had any questions.
Thank you, Chad. Questions for Chad about this? I'm guessing this was in reaction to the arrest that happened on the Front Range? Okay.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, let's keep moving. I don't see any hands.
The Healthy Community Fund budget and contract management changes are really just a heads up. We did a little bit of a flip-flop so that the mental health collaborative funding that funds Chelsea's job as a mental health analyst, where we do collective impact with the hospital and the city and the schools. Public health is going to manage that contract, and we're proposing, or maybe you approved yesterday today in the supplemental, that the budget moves so that public health can manage that contract. And then Human Services is going to take on the management of the contract for integrated healthcare for low-income populations, which is the collective impact contract that we have with the hospital and Eagle County and Mountain Family Health Center to provide low-income healthcare. So this is really mostly a housekeeping thing. The services will remain the same, but the contract management will change. So that's an FYI.
I do have a question about that, Nan. So then, sure. You know, we've seen over the years that the public health portion of the Healthy Community Fund has grown. So will this make it look even bigger? Just so we keep that in mind.
No, we'll still be keeping track of how much goes to public health. But I guess that's a good question. Ultimately, I suppose it will look bigger because public health will be managing it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So moving forward, and you can always interrupt me if you have more questions. The Healthy Community Fund is almost done with the Blackbaud software update. And so our applications for 2022 funding will be going through Blackbaud. And so it will be all electronic. And Lindsay's working with the nonprofits to train them on this. And we think that it's going to give us a better way of tracking outcomes as well as the utilization of the dollars. But just a heads up that I think most of our partners are up after a 3-year partnership. So we're going to have a lot of new applications to look at in the fall. And then Matt had a little bit more about foster care recruitment, or do you feel like you covered it, Matt?
Just the update is we have our annual plan each year. I've updated a little bit in the past around trying to get local foster care available. We've been successful in certifying 3 homes. now the effort is really in line with some of the Family First requirements, where we're trying to expand some of our foster care services to include licensed therapeutic homes that would give us more flexibility on how we serve children that may have special needs. And so that's something right now we're taking another regional effort with Garfield County, and I'll be submitting a plan to the state that hopefully will include how we can partner with Garfield County and provide training for foster homes so they can get that therapeutic designation.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Matt. A lot of things up in the air for Family First, and of course in the rural areas, most of the counties in the state of Colorado do not have evidence-based practices, so we're not alone in trying to build these services. BOCC discretionary funds, Sam.
Hi there. So I'm kind of taking over for Lindsay on this. Lindsay had mentioned that a while back the BOCC had allocated around $14,000 in discretionary funds to the Healthy Community Fund to specifically address food security. And we had spoken earlier, and she had expressed the interest that we wanted to get a little guidance on how we could use those funds. And we really came up with two options that we think as a food distribution group would be the most effective use at this time. One option is to use the funds to help support the stabilization of SANA, which is the Safe and Abundant Nutrition Alliance. There's currently a gap in leadership with that organization. They are the ones administering the food distribution in Algebel that serves a lot of Pickens County residents. And essentially, if these funds were allocated towards SANA, it would help bring in a consultant who's familiar with food security in the region, as well as the grant that SANA is working under at this time. And that person would be able to step in and help manage the grant until a more long-term solution could be put in place. The concern is that if SANA doesn't get stabilized, the group might not continue on, which could result in an issue with providing that mobile distribution in Algebel. The other option is the funds could be used to continue to purchase fresh produce and meat from local providers for the Aspen and Algebel distributions. Currently, we're using $100,000 from the state, which is through the Food Pantry Assistance Grant, to purchase meat and local produce that's been distributed at both those mobile distributions. It's been very well received, and I know folks would be happy to have that quality produce and meat at these distributions on an ongoing basis. So we were just hoping to get some guidance from the Board of Social Services on this.
Okay, let's check in on questions or ideas about these options. Greg.
Yeah, thank you. Great to see you, Sam. I'm in on some of those Sonic calls, and so I'm somewhat familiar. I'd love to know more about the option one before I were to choose it. Option two is really attractive to me, only because I think it's exciting for people in the Valley to get locally produced produce and food, and it also helps the farmers. So it seems like the money really goes farther there, but I'd have to understand the urgency of the need, and if it's time to be supplementing SANA, if it's seeming to be unstable in that part of the Valley, is now the time to dump money in or put money in, or do we actually have a plan for who's going to be taking it over? I guess I want to know more, but my inclination would be to aim for option two, which seems like a sure thing. The money gets directly into food for the recipients.
Thanks, Greg. Other questions or thoughts? Patty?
Yeah, I support the money going directly to food products. I think it's important that there's healthy food on the table for these people, just because that's just critical to the family as a whole and to what, their nutritional standards and how they can move forward in life. So that's where I would like to see the money going. I
have a question. Are these two linked at all? are the same folks who are participating in SANA's efforts in El Jabal also participating in the distributions in El Jabal that are provided by the food assistance, the food pantry grant?
Yeah, so the way it's currently working, Food Bank of the Rockies is providing some baseline supplies for these distributions in both Aspen and in El Jabal. The distribution in Aspen is being carried out by Aspen Family Connections and their volunteers. The distribution in El Jabal is being coordinated by SANA and their volunteers. And the produce and meats that we're purchasing using the Food Pantry Assistance Grant simply go to each of those sites to supplement what's being distributed. So it really just adds to what each family is taking home each week and ensuring that they're getting, you know, good local, meats as well as locally raised and produced produce. And like Greg mentioned, there's hardly any admin costs. Almost all of the funding goes directly back to the producers, which is great.
So is there a risk that the El Jabal site could go away if SANA doesn't have the appropriate support?
There is some risk. The other thing is that we can also, you know, look into our network to see who else might be able to take that on, especially in the short term. So there is some risk, but I don't think it necessarily means that it would. I don't think there's a guarantee that that distribution would disappear since it is so heavily utilized.
Okay. Steve or Francie, do you have a preference? Steve, and then Greg, I saw your hand. You can go after Steve.
There are quite a few of the local food producers who are actually dedicating some of their food to the local food pantries. I think they already kind of have a connection on getting food to the pantries. Also, there's the effort of gleaning produce that would go to waste. And that, I think, goes into the local food pantries. So it seems like there's already kind of a mechanism for getting the locally produced food to the food pantries. And I don't want to discourage that, and maybe the option 2 would be a way to make that system even better.
Okay, thank you. Greg, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just for Sam regarding admin or administration of the El Jabal site. Do you have somebody in mind, like a fix-it sort of person to help make that stable? Do you have somebody teed up for that?
Not off the top of my head. However, we do have a ESF6 food distribution group meeting on Friday, where we'll have a little bit more information on what's going on with SANA, and we can bring it to the group at that time, which includes Lift Up and Food Bank of the Rockies and all of the food partners. So I think if need be, we can have that discussion then, and I'm sure we could make some progress towards identifying another group that might be able to take this on if need be.
Got it. Yeah, I was thinking Lift Up has gone through, as you know, some administrative changes, and I'm wondering if John Doherty might have some insight. So it sounds like he's already in the loop, and who knows? He seems like he might be a good resource to help with that as well. Maybe that's his next project. Who knows? Just thought I'd mention it.
Thanks, Greg. Francie?
Yeah, I was just wondering if some of the providers are people to whom we lease their farm.
So we purchase produce through a collective, the farm, I'm forgetting the name right now. It's organized with skips, and basically what they do is they purchase from a number of local producers, kind of an aggregator, and then they collect the produce and orders and distribute it. So it is getting spread out pretty much among, I think almost every producer here is involved in that. I know that Two Roots is, and they're on some county property, so it is getting out to those folks as well.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm thinking this is, you know, a regular meeting of the Board of Social Services, but not really necessary to take a formal vote because you all decided in December to give your excess discretionary funds for food. And what I'm hearing from most everyone is to really pursue more option 2, really trying to get food on the table for people. So if I'm correct in that, that gives Sam the guidance that he needs.
I mean, I'll just say, I also, like, I'm comfortable in staff's discretion if you feel like, you know, splitting up the dedication of the fund helps achieve both goals. You know, I would hate for that eligible site to be at risk. That's what I'm comfortable at, but I heard the same as you, Nan, so I'll just do a last check-in here to see if anyone changes their mind at all, based on my proposal to let staff spend it in both buckets if they
Kelly,
see a good need.
Yeah, Greg here.
Yeah.
I'd have to say that's perfectly reasonable. I always like hearing what the staff's, you've got your feet on the ground. So if something requires a tweaking, I'd be fine with that. So yeah, I'd like to let you know that I'm flexible on that as well.
Patty?
Yeah, I can be flexible, but only as long as the majority of the money goes for the purchase of food. Because if we don't have the food to distribute, we don't need to have distribution efforts.
Does that, Steve, go ahead.
I'm not familiar with the operations of SANA and where they get their funding from, other funding sources, how they get the food, how they distribute it. So, yeah, I definitely would leave it up to Sam to be able to, you know, have some discretion to we want to keep SANA going, is my understanding also, and we don't want to jeopardize them by totally neglecting them, but then I don't understand how SANA works exactly. So I leave a lot of discretion up to Sam and Nan in figuring that out.
Does that help you guys or make it harder?
No, that's helpful. I think if you all are good with Sam having the discretion, he can talk to the food group and see what they recommend. And we all need to look into SANA and their viability before we invest any more money, right? And but we will focus on the priority being food on the table for people, however way that happens.
Perfect.
Thank you.
And we'll let you know. Okay, Sam, you got it?
That's great. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have a few emergency support function 6, which is the pandemic incident command response. Human services always serves in emergency support function 6, which is mass care and shelter. And we had a couple of updates. Kelly asked for an update on homelessness, so I have a little bit of an update there, but I'm going to ask Matt to talk about access and functional needs first.
Sure, I have a quick update there. Our access and functional needs have been for people directly impacted by the pandemic that may need some support in getting some assistance or needs met. And so we did receive 2 separate grants totaling $55,000, and we have already expended that over the last 8 months. And so one of the things we recently did was apply for more funding from the Aspen Community Foundation, and it wasn't in the update, but we recently were awarded another $20,000 to help support our access and functional needs emergency assistance. And so right now we have the ability to continue that program. Referrals for that have gone down, but they're still there and we're still available. So that's the update I have for access and functional needs.
Thank you. And I have an update on the homeless programs. Just a reminder that Pickens County was successful getting Emergency Solutions Grant, ESG, CV for COVID. So the first tranche of funding, we got 70,000. The second tranche, we got 178,000, which we gave to Catholic Charities to manage rapid rehousing. We got 60,000 from the Colorado Health Foundation. This is all, you know, in the last year. We got 5,300 from CHAFA, which is the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority, for electricity to the safe outdoor space in the winter months. And then we got a big grant in October, 500,000 ESG COVID-2, the second tranche of funding. And that has been supporting our emergency shelter. We've been putting people in hotel rooms. It supports the safe outdoor space. And we're really excited to say that we have 11 people set up for housing. So we're actually moving chronic and veteran homeless people into housing for the first time in many years. We're excited about that.
Well done.
Yeah, the third tranche, I spelled that, but I don't know if it's right. The third bunch of money just was awarded a few weeks ago, and Recovery Resources is going to take our spot with the homeless services, and they were awarded 540,000 through October of 2022 to continue the programs that we started. Eagle County was awarded 640,000 of emergency solutions for the homeless, and Glenwood Springs was awarded almost 300,000. So all in all, in the last year, we've been successful bringing in almost 1.4 million to Pitkin County to support the homeless during COVID, and now we have almost another $1 million to the region. So we're really excited about that. I think, you know, we encouraged our regional partners that you could apply for this money and you can find ways to spend it, and you can work to end homelessness. So we have regional efforts going on. There's a housing stability meeting on June 11th, and that's where we have a coalition working on ending chronic and veteran homelessness, and the focus of that meeting will really be on what do we do for a winter shelter in this next winter coming up, because these COVID dollars will not pay for an emergency shelter. So we need to find a solution to that, the ongoing case management and HUD compliance, and then housing options. And I just quickly, the last Housing Stability Coalition meeting, these were the priorities that were set by the group. First, to ensure accurate data, so that we know how many people are homeless, who they are, where they are, and what their desires are for their life. We want to continue to promote the Housing First model, which is really, you have to house people first before you deal with issues like substance use, mental illness, or other barriers to living life independently. And so we've been doing trainings in the community with Nicole Martinez on the Housing First model. We are working on engaging landlords and property owners to expand our housing options. So right now, I think we have 6 people for sure in apartments in rapid rehousing. We're very excited about that. And but we have probably another 6 to 15 more who we could house. So we need to find more housing, as everyone needs to find more housing, right? Looking at the continuum of housing, the safe outdoor space, you know, just the whole range of whether or not we look for a permanent safe outdoor space, not where it is currently, tiny homes, rapid rehousing, the whole gamut of housing, permanent supported housing. And increase increasing partnerships with local companies to advance the vision to end chronic and veteran homelessness, and really to keep expanding our regional connections, because our regional partners are starting to get the same money we're getting. So really looking at where are the regional solutions, where are we best in size and scope with a regional solution versus a local solution. And I'm gonna try, and I apologize that I haven't already, to come into a work session in the next month or two to talk about the safe outdoor space successes, challenges, and the growing need for a permanent camping spot in Pickens County. As we know today, my homeless service providers are overwhelmed by people who have come into the county now to work for the summer and have no place to live. So more to come on that. We'll bring that topic for another. Are there any questions about that, Kelly? You wanted me to bring this update.
No, I appreciate all of it. I just want to point out that despite all the robust housing efforts, APSHA is a 40-year program that doesn't do any of this work, right? So there are like different paths of need. Nan, I'm just so impressed at what your team has accomplished, and I know it's bigger than what you've been given to work with. So I think about that a lot, and I've been listening to Nicole Martinez's trainings, and they've been super informative for me. So I do just want to acknowledge that, and I really appreciate all this effort, because I know that every winter we run into this question about a homeless shelter, and I'm thrilled that the whole continuum of care is becoming real for some folks. Are the folks that you are able to house preferring to stay in Pitkin County, or are they being housed elsewhere, or are they flexible in their preferences?
Yeah, thank you. It's about half and half to date. A lot of it has to do with availability. So we have 4 units in Pitkin County, but we're also finding more units in Carbondale and Glenwood. And we're happy to house people wherever they can find housing that works for them. We're not putting anyone where they don't want to be.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Great. Thank you. Other questions for Nan on this update? No? All right.
Okay.
Great work. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so Chad.
All right, yep, thanks. So just a brief update from Senior Services, some data and some work that we've been doing. So here's just a visual of some of our meal program, or our meal program to date. So we traditionally provide congregate meals, so meals here at the Senior Center, and home delivered meals. So since the beginning of the pandemic last March, we have suspended all congregate or meals at our Senior Center, and so all meals are home delivered. And so the data is a little skewed, obviously. But if you look at last year, once COVID started, our meals are just as high as they have been. And we anticipate that even in the next month or so, as we kind of go through a phased reopening of our building to the public and our meals, we anticipate our meal numbers to stay high where they have been the last year. We did have a number of new clients reach out, and more people that have some connection with us wanting more meals more frequently. So we're anticipating the workload to shift logistically, but not by case, if you will. And we were really fortunate this past quarter that we had 30 volunteers assisting us in getting all those meals out every single day. We really couldn't do it without all those volunteers. It would be extremely challenging for staff to do that. So we anticipate this trend to continue moving into the summer months and the next quarter. Any questions about the meal program or any other programs or reopening? I could try to answer.
What is can you give a little more detail on the phased reopening?
Sure. So we've been discussing as staff and working with public health, looking at a phased reopening of the senior center as public health orders seem to change quite frequently. We've been trying to figure out what is the best way for staff, more in the logistical sense, and the best and safest way for our clients to return back to a congregate setting. So we kind of decided, and really stemming off of a kind of a phased approach that the library was utilizing, to slowly phase back into a larger meal setting at the senior center, with slowly opening our building up to the public, having small number of individuals participating in programs and then meals, and slowly ramping up the number depending where public health orders / guidance lands at that moment, building up the program participation allowances as well as the number of people eating here at the center, meaning inside our building, not counting our patio. So we're looking at that phase approach of a week or 2 weeks, and then stepping into the next section of slowly increasing the number of individuals doing different programs and participating in our meals, which would include slowly pulling back the number of meals that we're delivering out into community. Some of it is more, it's equal parts safety as well as logistics, trying to go from delivering 80 meals to serving in person half and half to serving more of that 80 counts in person. So there's some pretty large logistical questions that we have and how to manage that. Mm-hmm. So we have a plan and we're working on it, and we're excited to see people come to the center for the first time in almost a year and a half. So
yeah, if you see any opportunity for the board to help kick that off and celebrate that, that's a really exciting, I think. Keep us in mind.
Great idea, will do.
Okay. All right, Francie.
Have you had a request from the seniors to come back? Are people asking about when they can come back? Or?
Yes, I would say it's a pretty small percentage. And in some state meetings around reopening senior centers, that is pretty much universal across Colorado. Some centers have been fully open for months. There are a few kind of similar to us here in Picken, probably being a little more conservative. But universally, very small percentages, less than 50% of people, if they're at 100% capacity, are even going back to centers in person. So we know of a small handful of individuals who have been waiting for a year, quite frankly, for us to reopen. So we do anticipate at least some individuals to come back right away. And that kind of aligns with our phased view as far as having small groups, seeing how that goes with comfort level and logistics, and then growing it up. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how it is.
Yeah, I would imagine once you get a few in there, then other people are going to start wanting to show up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's really good news. I'm so glad that's happening.
Okay, should we move on?
Okay, so this last slide here, hopefully it's not too confusing, but I guess, have been involved in many different I would say, advocacy roles, both here locally and then around the state. So I just wanted to kind of give a brief update on some of those. So all of you are aware of the Age Friendly Initiative, what used to be called the Aging Well Plan for Pickens County, and that I have a senior advisory board, the senior council. So I kind of laid out this map here that these different groups across the top, the Colorado Commission on Aging, which I was appointed by Governor Hickenlooper a number of years ago now, and then the Strategic Action Planning Group on Aging, which Commissioner Child is, I believe, still a part of, which connects with the Commission on Aging. That I have been involved in kind of more of advocacy roles in, I guess, both those groups as Commissioner Child has. Lifelong Colorado is a initiative that started with Governor Hickenlooper, but it's more or less Colorado's version of age-friendly communities, just with a different name. And now that we have a different senior policy advisor on aging to the governor, Jarrett Hughes, he's trying to revitalize that initiative. And I'm on the advisory board or committee for this state initiative to build awareness around age-friendly communities and what does that look like for different types of communities and different sizes of communities. So we're really trying to advocate for looking at aging not only with its challenges, but with its opportunities and positive aspects. The final bubble here is the Colorado Coalition for Aging Research and Education. That's a really long name. It's a relatively newer group of universities around our state that are focusing on aging research and education. Since I do some adjunct teaching at Western Colorado Community College in Grand Junction, I was asked to join this small group of educators and researchers to help promote those aspects of aging or gerontology research and education across our state, with a particular focus on workforce training, which is mainly my focus as an adjunct professor over in Grand Junction. So all of these different groups and work is really advocating in many different layers and areas around aging. If it's research, if it's education, if it's community awareness, community building, lots of these different efforts. So I just wanted to share the efforts going on in the departments via me and via others around advocacy for all things aging.
Great, thanks, Chad. Any other questions? Or Steve, did you want to offer? I know you sit on at least one of these boards with Chad. Go ahead.
Well, the Strategic Action Planning Group on Aging is nearing the end of its life before it is scheduled to sunset per the original state legislation in 2015. And we don't know what's going to happen with the group or with the members, if it's going to be extended by the state legislature, or if it's going to be, maybe the efforts will be wrapped into the other things that Chad has put here on the chart. So that's an unknown question right now that we'll figure out in the next year or so what is going to happen. I know the people involved in it are going to stay engaged in aging issues in some capacity or other, whether it's in the SAPCA committee or something else. I don't know.
All right, any questions?
Also,
Yeah.
I sit on the Adult and Aging Sub-PAC Policy Advisory Committee that advises the Human Services Director on rule and allocation and protocols around aging. One of the things that we've been looking at is that almost every group, probably not the Coalition on Aging Research, all have strategic plans, including the Human Services Association. So we've been advocates for trying to align these strategic plans and really looking at how fragmented aging services has been in the state, which has resulted in a loss of power and position and status. And so I think that I like, Chad, your flow chart, as your org chart, as simple as it is. What it says to me is we need to align the state on aging initiatives in order to really make a meaningful difference throughout the state.
All right, great, thank you.
So, yeah, thank you, Chad. Last slide for us, I think, unless there's another one. And this was in your memo, but the Board of County Commissioners gives me permission to sign contracts and IGAs on your behalf with the county manager's approval. So during the first quarter, these are things that I signed: the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP Outreach Contractor Agreement. It was an amendment. Then we signed an extension of a contract with Mountain Chalet that they've been providing non-congregate shelter for people who are sick with COVID, need to quarantine from COVID, or at high risk of COVID. And that project is 100% reimbursed by FEMA. And we have already gotten reimbursement from FEMA already, which is exciting. We did an emergency procurement of Recovery Resources. You may remember that Recovery Resources is the group that runs our detox. They also manage our pre-trial services, and now they're becoming our primary case management services for the homeless. And so we entered into the contract with them in order to spend the CV2. Pre-trial consultation with Recovery Resources, that's an extension of a contract with them. Pre-trial is where they provide services to people who can't afford to bond out, and the judge gives them an option to work with pre-trial and establish conditions on which they would be bonded out. And the last is an intergovernmental agreement with Garfield County for the ongoing provision of child support services, which is what they've been doing for us for as long as I've been in my job, over 30 years. So those are any questions on any of those agreements?
Patty.
Yeah, Patty.
Yeah, Nan, if the board agrees with me on this, could you draft us a quick little letter of thank you we can send to the Melville family at Mountain Chalet, thanking them for helping us out here? They've had a lot going on in their family life this year, and I think this has really been beneficial to the community, and I think a little personal note to that family would be great.
Nice, yeah.
And you can bring it back, and we can, Kelly and I can sign it, and anybody else who wants to come to a meeting in person is more than welcome to sign the thank you note.
Well, for the most part, our managers will be coming back 2 to 3 days a week starting in the beginning of June, so you will see us more often.
We can't wait. Thank you, Nan.
And, yeah, absolutely. And just a heads up that you all are, we have to sign now in the second quarter the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program and Colorado Works Memo of Understanding. And so I just got that yesterday, so I'll be advancing that to you. It's an annual agreement, and I think it's changed a little bit, so we'll bring it back to you all for signature. And I think that's it.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Good job.
Any final questions, thoughts, board would like to share or ask of our Human Services team? Francie.
I just want to thank you all for the incredible work that you do in the county. I'm so impressed by it. And, you know, I was kind of locked in my classroom for 35 years and wasn't really aware of all the stuff that the county does. And you guys do a lot of the lion's share, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Steve?
Well, I don't know if the rest of you are aware, but Francie and I both got to know Nan through the Carbondale Community School because your daughter Joan, I actually didn't have Joan teaching in the first. I did have her. I did have her in the second.
You had her in 1, 2, and Francie had her in 7, 8.
7 and 8, and then I had Joan in the big event that one year when I came back to help out. So we have a connection going way back, way before our years here with Pickens County.
Yeah, and she's going to be 30 this year, just FYI. She's not a baby anymore.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, well, thank you all.
Anything else? Otherwise, we can end early.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll fill the time. So we'll give you back your extra time this afternoon. And yeah, I'll reiterate the thanks for all that you do, and especially supporting our most vulnerable residents.
We have an amazing team of, I think, 24 people now, and everyone, you know, each person on our team is extraordinary, really, in terms of their compassion and the abundance of capacity to keep giving. So we're really fortunate on our team.
Yeah, you guys are great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
see you soon.
Nan and all. Yeah.
Bye.
So since we will have some invited guests at our Healthy Rivers Grants presentation, I'm going to propose that we discuss future agendas, and then if there's time, board open discussion, and we'll have a few-minute break before 2:45.
Perfect.
All right, so Rich Engelhardt, Deputy County Manager, is here with us today. Any items for us to consider on future agendas? You're muted.
I just told myself that. So, probably I didn't see any in the civic clerk, and I didn't hear of any additions. So I'm here, though, to report any you may have and get those back to our agenda setters.
Okay. Let's see, Patty.
Yeah, forgive me for being confused on this one, but on the 26th at our regular meeting, we have a second reading of the Phillips River access issue. I thought we continued that, or possibly it was only a first read. So can we just clarify that? Because I'm not quite sure. Does anybody remember clearly what I'm not remembering?
No, you're right.
So we just need to clarify that one, Rich.
Okay.
And the other one was, we're supposed to be bringing back Emma Fields for clarification on the resolution and the conditions of approval. So that needs, it might already be on there, but it wasn't on the copy that I received. And I have one last item. Greg, I'm confused on when you're going to be here or not. You're leaving on the 1st, right?
No, I'm leaving the 25th.
And you'll be gone through the 1st.
24th, actually. And I'm going to be gone through about the 4th. But I'll be trying to get on remotely whenever I can.
Okay.
Got it. I will note, there was a question about what on the 26th about the ag, the updates to Title 8 related to the Agricultural Building Review Committee. We thought we had taken care of that, I think last year. Cindy sent me a note, Cindy Hubin sent me a note saying that it removes the references to this committee in different parts of the code. Because as you may remember, we all discussed removing that committee last year or the year before.
So it's just getting back to us?
Cleaning up, yeah,
Okay.
I think. Any other items? I'm working to get some stuff scheduled just as a report back to the board. I had sent Francie and John Ely a proposed draft agenda for the River District, and then we'll forward that along to them for their approval or to add anything, and then I'm waiting to hear from them about which Tuesdays they're available to come before us. Any other items folks want to have considered? No? Okay.
Kelly, if I might, I was pulling
Yeah.
up the civic clerk, and Patty, I missed your very first one. You need clarification on which one?
On the Phillips River access,
No.
it's under second
Okay.
read, and does anybody remember?
It was supposed to be a one-read resolution, so it was noticed incorrectly as a two-read ordinance. And then, you know, the attorney's office wanted to get that all cleared up related to how, you know, the housing fee impacts that transfer, any transfer of the property to open space.
So it should come back as a continuation of first reading.
Well, it has to be completely re-noticed, because it's a
Okay.
one-read resolution
Right.
rather than a two-read ordinance.
So it probably won't be
So I
on
think it
next
just
week.
needs to be removed from the 26th for now.
Right, exactly.
We don't have time to notice.
Oh, thank you. I'll follow up on that one.
All right, any others right now? Oh, I know what we were gonna add, the housing impact fee. And revisit that conversation, I thought, on the one of our work sessions.
For Emma Field?
Not for Emma Fields, for the housing impact fee.
In general?
Well, we had been proposed with, you know, whether to change the fee to be based on, you know, whether it's a proportion, 60% to 100%, or whether it's 100% of the fee that gets paid, and whether it's 80% AMI or 100% AMI. And we needed more time because we ran out of time on that discussion. So I think we need to get that back.
Yeah.
And Kelly, I also believe the board had talked about even the expenditure side of that too, which probably is
Right.
two separate conversations, the collections and then how those are expensed. Is that correct?
Yeah, let's check in on that. So what was proposed before us was a conversation related to how we collect the fee. And then Patty had
Right.
raised concern about, if we can spend the fee, how, the policies about how we spend the fee. So in the urban growth boundary, et cetera. I'll just say my preference would be to sort of divorce those questions and collect the fee based on how we want to collect the fee, and then also you know, schedule the conversation about how we want to spend it. But I want to check in with the board on that.
I think we need to run it by John Ely and see if they're ready to bring it back and how they feel about that. I don't have a problem separating it out as long as we don't forget to get it done.
Sure. Is that okay? Steve?
I just noticed that on the June 8th work session, Kelly, you had suggested a different ending time for it to coincide with the CCI meetings in Vail, and that has not been changed on this future agenda.
You're right.
And I don't recall the exact times that you had suggested for ending at 2:30, I think you said.
Yeah, starting at 12:30 and ending at 2:30. Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
Okay, any others? Okay. And Rich, you and I can get together and get notes to Elaine or Charlotte or whoever. Okay.
Sounds good. We'll do that. Thank you, board.
Okay, we can move on to open discussion. Rich, anything for us? You're muted again.
Unmute myself here. Let me double check here. I don't see any notes in the civic clerk, so I do not have anything.
Okay. Any board members? No open discussion right now? Gosh, we're a quiet board today.
We're waiting for that COVID discussion that we're not having today.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, well, with that, I think we will take a break for just a little bit over 15 minutes here. And we'll reconvene at 2:45 for our Healthy Rivers and Streams Grants presentation. So see you all back here at 2:45. Thanks, Grassroots. We'll see you at 2:45. Okay, welcome back everyone to the Picken County Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, May 18th. We are at our agenda item to hear Healthy Rivers and Streams grants presentations. This is always an exciting meeting of the year, so it's nice to see our applicants here, and I will turn it over to Lisa McDonald, who's our staff liaison for that program. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Kelly, and thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lisa McDonald with the Healthy Rivers program, and I am joined today by our grant applicants and our vice chairman, Bill Yocum. Bill is here to support, to offer support of the grants and answer any questions the BOCC might have concerning the River Board's decisions on the grant. And so let's see, as you know, the Healthy Rivers offers a grant program with a spring and fall cycle. The budget for the year is $150,000. The grants in front of you today total $73,500. Requests over $5,000 are brought to the BOCC for authorization at a work session. Funds are appropriated in our 2021 budget and do not need formal action by the BOCC. We received 5 grant applications this spring, and 3 were approved. 1 was denied and 1 was withdrawn. The applicants today will provide you a brief summary of the request, and the BOCC will have an opportunity after each request to ask questions, provide comments, and authorize or deny the request. So I think with that, I am not seeing our first applicant for the Sustaining Colorado the Watershed Conference. So I'm going to hop off and try to give those guys a call. I did get confirmation from everybody, so I'm not sure what happened there. So I think we will turn it over to Megan to give her presentation for the Conservancy request.
Great, thank you. Hi, Megan.
Hi. So I'm Megan Dean, Director of Education for Roaring Fork Conservancy. And
Megan, could you lean a little closer to your microphone? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I'll use my teacher voice. I don't get that very often. Usually I'm told that I'm talking too loud. So my name is Megan Dean. I am the Director of Education for Roaring Fork Conservancy. I just want to say thank you for your time and this opportunity. Over the years, the support that we've received from Healthy Rivers and Streams has done a lot to help support our goals as an organization, specifically the protection of our rivers. This year, the goal of our education program is to build experiences and learning that will create future river stewards. And at this point, I'm going to screen share over to my slide deck. Okay, are you guys seeing the presentation?
We can, thank
Great.
you.
So the first goal that we have in this grant request is to update and revitalize our programming. We need to consistently work to revitalize our programs and create new programming that will entice and impact the students and new demographics that we're seeing in the Valley and in the state. As pressure on our rivers increase due to drought and rising population, I really believe that our students, and I've seen through my own experiences, our students can truly become ambassadors in their community for the protection of rivers. It's a very powerful tool and something that I think that we have a lot of influence in. Having worked as a classroom teacher just a few years ago and having my own kids in the education system, I currently understand the methods and goals of education and how education has changed. And our goal is to always reflect that so that we can entice and guide students with the materials and the methods that are going to be most impactful. Last year, throughout 2020, we were still able to reach close to 3,000 students through our virtual and in-person learning classes. We did a lot of outdoor field program work, and we just had an amazing response from students and teachers that were so excited to connect to the natural world and get away from screens. But we also want to incorporate how they learn. So there's a picture in this lower corner that shows a video that I made. This video was using our new augmented reality fan table, and it also shows a top-down view. And we are sending all of those videos that we created throughout the last year to the teachers before they come to our program. And that really allows the students to get an introduction, and it makes them kind of excited when they see us in real life. So it's a double impact. So that's just one of the examples of some of the changes that we've already made, and kind of goes into the changes that we want to make. We're really looking to create programming that has a lot of depth in connecting personal and educational experiences so that students can connect from things that they've already experienced, so it's not so foreign and abstract. Encouraging personal share-outs and having them be a voice, even within our programming, getting away from teacher-led instruction and using a lot of models and scales is really the education of the future. And some people have been doing that for years. And we've had that interwoven into our program, but I would like to get that even more on the forefront and the base model. And to do that, I've been wanting to restructure a lot of the programs that we've been doing for years to incorporate all of those things. This just shows a couple examples of some of the things that we've started to create, and we're using things like kinetic sand to allow students to create their own models. So hoping with this funding we can expand that. we can really take what we've piloted and put it onto a broader scale, have more materials, so we can have smaller group sizes. The kids can have more hands-on time and also create a safer environment. As things change, our restrictions are becoming less and less, but small group sizes have been really, really pivotal this year. So we've been hearing from the teachers, and school budgets are definitely getting tight, and we've had a lot of continued requests for scholarships for our programming. We're also asking for funding to help with that. We don't want to have basically the economics and the tight budgets keep students in schools from accessing what we have to offer. Many schools are really struggling with transportation issues, some of those due to funding, and some of those are just due to lack of drivers and lack of busing. And so increasing site instruction allows schools to experience programs when busing is not an option. Doing increased site instruction creates a situation for us where we really want to explore different sites in the valley, modify programs so that students can walk to where we are, and also utilize what they're familiar with and connect that to what they're learning from us. So that place-based education has been something that I've seen to be an increased need. This is a fun thank you card that we received from Glenwood Springs Elementary School this year. They could not at the time come up to us, so we went to them and just modified a program quickly to reflect where we were at and adjacent to their school on Red Mountain. And they were really excited, and they put together this really nice thank you card for us. And that was me trying to be a unicorn. So the next portion of the grant funding that we're hoping to receive is to help us subsidize the water conference that we're partnering with Water Education Colorado to host at the River Center here in Basalt. They reached out to us and really wanted to host this conference in our valley and at our center. We've done a lot of collaborating to try to figure out how to do that with some of the restrictions that were in place earlier this year, but hopefully we'll have even more opportunity with some of the restrictions lifting. We wanted to offer our site for a nominal fee to help support the conference and encourage valley and state teachers to attend this wonderful learning opportunity. While we do not want cost to affect the viability of this conference as it mirrors many of our own goals, this event will require increased staff time, and will also block out other building uses requiring an investment from us. So support.
Can you lean a little bit more in, Megan? Sorry. Lean in a little bit more. We kind of lost the last part of your statement. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I said, while we do not want the cost to affect the viability of this conference, as it mirrors many of our goals, this event will require increased staff time and will block out other building uses requiring an investment from us. So support from healthy rivers and streams would really help us offset this cost and fortify this conference. The fourth part of this grant request is for Bridges High School. They've reached out to us and would like us to work with a group of their students. We did some pilot programming last year, but we would like to increase it, and they expressed that. We want to develop a 4-part or an 8-part series over the course of 2 semesters. And in doing that, really establish a strong foundation and connection with these students. We found over and over again, the more we focus on series instruction, meeting with students multiple times, meeting with students at multiple different sites throughout the valley, their idea of how watersheds work, how they're layered, how they're all connected, increases and grows. And that really creates the change in action, and it creates that ownership within their communities. These students are at a time in their lives where they really are deciding how they're going to act as adults. And they also have a lot of influence over the adults in their community. So this was a really nice opportunity, and we were happy that Bridges School reached out to us and want us to do that with them next year. And the students are wonderful to work with. And the final part of the grant proposal is focusing on snow science. We have a really strong snow science program that we've offered to middle school students, high school students, and adults for the last 10 years. We want to expand it to allow our elementary schools to benefit from the experience of understanding where our water comes from and how snow affects our watershed. To do that, we need to create another series program that allows students to connect to our snow through developing appropriate classes for that age group. We also want to develop tools and equipment that those students can use even though they're younger. Our goal is to create a 3 to 4 class series with equipment and visual aids. We want to expand it to allow our elementary students to benefit from the experience of understanding where our water comes from and how snow affects our watershed. And that'll tie into a lot of the programs that we're already offering them. And then we'll be able to see those students again in middle school for more advanced programs, and then hopefully again in high school. So by the time they've graduated from 12th grade, they'll have seen us 3 different times and really have a strong understanding of how snow and climate change affects our watershed. So overall, our rivers we realize, and everyone realizes, that our rivers are facing increased pressure from drought and from growing population. The programs that we're seeking funding for will allow us to continue to bring high quality, impactful watershed education to the next generation of river stewards, and also create immediate positive actions right now through those students, even though they're not adults yet. We're hoping that those positive programs will bring positive actions to benefit our rivers and our communities. And we thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, great. Questions for Megan from the board on the grant proposal? Francie, and then Lisa, I'll come to you.
I just say that I was on the receiving end of a lot of that when I was a teacher, and had some pretty fun trips, and it's an amazing program, so I can't imagine objecting to this.
I think, Francie, I might have caught you right toward the end. I'm pretty sure I was in your classroom once or twice.
Yeah, I think so too.
Cool. Lisa.
Great. I just wanted to note that the River Board reduced the request by $4,000 for that, the water education, the teachers program, because in March, Jayla Poppleton, who is on the call with us today, with WECO came to us for a request to sponsor $2,000 towards that program. So the board felt that a reduction in the grant request due to that already sponsored funds was appropriate. So
Okay,
just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Greg.
Yeah.
Well, right, I was going to bring that up as well. I saw the comments on it, and I just wanted to give Megan and the Roaring Fork Conservancy folk an opportunity to defend that ask. Before we go along with it, I'm inclined to follow the advice of the Healthy Rivers Board, but I'd like to hear, because I was trying to figure out the balance, you know, what happens where, and is it getting paid for twice, for instance, or, you know, why wouldn't Water Education Colorado be covering that cost, you know, and asking for it on there, and just wondering how that came about, because I'm seeing a kind of a theme that the board is trying to make sure that there's accountability and that also they know where we're trying to eliminate redundancies. So I'd love to just ask, and Megan, if you don't have anything to say, I'm wondering if maybe Bill or someone else from the board might, or Lisa, if there's more you can add.
Well, and I can add just a little bit. The number that we requested was so that we would not have to charge them for our site rental fees. We were just hoping that we would be able to offer it without charging them. But if they receive money from another source and have that money to pay for the site rental fees, then we definitely would not want to double dip.
Great, thank you. And Bill, did you have anything to offer on behalf of the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board? Nice to see you.
Hello. Well, with respect to this reduction that the board voted for, there was no suggestion that this was any form of a intentional double dipping. Rather, it was thought of as some sort of oversight. But still, we felt there should be that reduction. And generally, of course, we're always pleased with the Conservancy's educational programs, and there's no reservations about what they propose to do by anybody on our board. We enthusiastically voted to approve with that one adjustment.
Great, thank you. So let's check in with the board and see if we support Healthy Rivers and Streams recommendation or if there's something different to discuss. Greg.
Kelly, I just wanted to add on to that. Megan, one of the things that always pops into my head when I'm on the RWAP board, and we talk a lot about the frying pan and the use of the frying pan river guide services. And when we were trying to work on aquatic nuisance species a while back, and I know Rainforest Conservancy has had an interest in that, I think, with us. What I saw is I perceived a disconnect with the fishing guides and the fishing organizations and the Healthy Rivers folk and the efforts to maintain the resource. And I'm just wondering, off the top of your head, can you tell me if Rainforest Conservancy is doing anything to help educate river guides and the new people coming in about this resource that they're making their livings off of? I just think it's such an important thing. I want to make sure there's no disconnect, as I perceived a few years back.
Yeah, it's a great question. We've brought the river guides in to actually help us as we do our fishing programs with the students. So we've reached out to local river guides to ask if they'd be willing to help us on some of our fly fishing camps. And through that, they've really been introduced to a lot of what we stand for and the proper etiquette and the sustainability of fly fishing. As far as wider than that, I do know that it's definitely been talked about meeting with some of those, some of the newer anglers before they get established in the valley, and even some of the older anglers. And that is not on my task list, but I do know that there are people on staff that are having that conversation and really reaching out. I know that there was some issues too with anglers and specifically guides accessing the river in areas that they were not supposed to access the river. So we've started to get involved in that as well, just to increase that education of where it's okay to access the river and where it's not.
Great, thank you. Sorry for the aside, Kelly. I couldn't help myself.
All good. Steve?
Megan, I'm wondering if you have connected with Andre Willie about his River Stewards program that he taught at Basalt High School and Aspen High School for quite some years. I don't know if he's still doing that at this point, but and did he bring it up at the Healthy Rivers meeting when you were presenting to him? He would be a tremendous resource for ideas and just backup information for you, I would think.
Great, thank you. And he probably still has some really great connections as well with some of the teachers. We found that personal connections are really how we get into a lot of the schools, which is really great. I worked with his wife 20 years ago at the Salt Elementary School, so thank you. I'll reach out to him.
Patty?
Yeah, of course I support this. My children and my grandchildren spend a great deal of their time on the rivers and educating themselves and educating others on river etiquette and the need to protect our rivers and streams. So I think a best way to start is with the younger age groups, because if anything, they're always teaching their parents. They always have something to teach their parents. So I think this is a great program. Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to clarify that we are supporting the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board recommendation on the grant for $31,000 to the Roaring Fork Conservancy?
Yes.
Just some head nods here. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much. And Megan, we appreciate you and all of your good work and look forward to hearing more about the accomplishments. So with that, we can go back to our first applicant. Lisa, if you'd like to introduce them.
Yeah, great. So joining us today, we have Casey Davenhill. I think Jayla Poppleton's there, and Julie Ash, and they are here for the $7,500 request for the Sustaining Colorado Watershed Conference over in Avon this year. So I'll let the ladies take it from there.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Lisa. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can. And if you could just say your names again, we can rename you all correctly because you're all Jayla.
You're all Jaylas.
I know. Well, I'm reminded of that old television program, What's My Line? Will the real Jayla Poppleton please stand up? But
that's a good one.
I am Casey Davenhill. I am the executive director of the Colorado Watershed Assembly, and very pleased to be able to be here today. So I'll go ahead and let Jayla and Julie get their names corrected, or Julie get her names corrected, and then just go back for a quick overview of the application.
How about, will the real Jayla raise your hand? Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a Jayla wannabe. I'm Julie Ash, and I'm a board member with the Colorado Riparian Association.
Thank you.
And the real Jayla.
I'm Jayla. Thanks everyone for having us here today. I'm the executive director at Water Education Colorado.
So I'll go ahead and start us off and just kind of a quick recap. We very much appreciate that the support that we have gotten from the Pitkin County Healthy Rivers and Streams Board in the past. They've been dedicated supporters of our Sustaining Colorado Watersheds Conference. We're a little bit late today because we were head deep in planning for this year's conference and trying to figure out how do we make a live conference and make the content of that conference available to as many people as possible who can't show up in person. So we learned a great deal last year with your support of our virtual conference, but we are planning on a somewhat smaller in-person attendance this year, but also hoping to be able to accommodate people in the virtual realm as well. We are asking for your support to the tune of $7,500, and we just feel that the constituency that you all represent. We have so many attendees and presenters from the Roaring Fork Watershed, Pitkin County. We do get great feedback year after year. We're very proud of this conference, and we're happy to be able just to know that you all are interested and invested enough to attend the conference. We want to make the opportunity available to you to welcome our conference attendees. Of course, the typical sponsorship opportunities are available to you, but we think what is so valuable is the networking and the interaction that takes place at this conference. And it's kind of evidenced by the three organizations that work together to put it on. Water Education Colorado has, as you were just discussing earlier, has this wonderful presence in the state in terms of outreach and education for Colorado citizens around water. The Colorado Riparian Association brings their technical skill and expertise and their network of technical professionals to the conference to share state-of-the-art training and news with each other. And then the Colorado Watershed Assembly does represent the over 90 watershed organizations, grassroots, locally connected organizations that are interested and dedicated to protecting and improving natural resources in their community, as well as the 75 plus conservation districts that exist within the state of Colorado, also to protect soil and water and natural resource conservation. We invite at least 5 attendees from Pitkin County Healthy Rivers and or commissioners to come and join us at the conference. And you know, the details are included in the application that we submitted. The theme of this year's conference is Together Like Never Before. And we are really putting some great effort into understanding what that looks like, whether it be increasing diversity, whether it be looking to break down some of the silo barriers that exist within, you know, the structure of state decision making. We're just really looking forward to the opportunity to get back together and share our experience over the past year and look to the future on how we can do even better in the future. So Julie, Jayla, please fill in for anything that I missed, or we're happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Casey. I might just add, you know, one of the roles and the value of sponsorships and the support that we receive from Pitkin County Healthy Rivers is keeping the conference affordable and providing access and scholarships to nonprofit organizations that might not otherwise be able to afford to send their staff, and to students. So every year we provide at least 25 scholarships and try to really create ways and opportunities for those students and kind of new members of the community to interact and start building their network and building their knowledge base around the work and the opportunities that exist. And so, you know, that's one of the things we were just looking at as a committee, is just really crunching the numbers of how we make the conference work each year. And this year we are expecting that our expenses are going to increase as a result of providing this dual experience of the live conference with all of the technology to broadcast to a virtual audience. We see a lot of opportunity in trying to accomplish that for growing the impacts that the conference can have sort of beyond the walls of the conference site. We really want to capitalize and learn from what we accomplished last year when we were really forced to adapt under the circumstances, and not lose kind of what these the doors that these new technologies open to that kind of broader engagement by people from diverse geographic regions that might not be able to travel to the conference. So just again, all 3 of our conference partners are so committed to this conference. It's very rewarding to bring everyone together and see what each other is working on, and to learn from one another, and to hear from just incredible experts that we're able to recruit to present, and really just to advance innovative ideas and the thinking and progress that people are making in the field. But we do invest a great deal of our own, you know, organizational staff capacity and energies into the conference, and without our sponsorship support, it would be really difficult for us to make kind of the numbers work while keeping registration fees as low as we have. So we just are so sincerely appreciative of you investing in this conference and making it possible in these past years to do what we've done. And we really thank you for considering this year's request and continuing that support.
Yeah, I'll add, I don't know if any of you have gone to this point yet of trying to make the hybrid, right? You're like, oh, we always did it in person. Last year we couldn't. This year we think we can, but not as much. And we just thought we didn't want to lose the opportunity for people that can't travel, or it definitely broadened things. But the shocker for me was it's gonna require putting on 2 conferences at the same time, because the experience that's good for in-person is almost exactly opposite of the experience that's good virtually, and vice versa. And we literally just had the conversation that was eye-opening for me, was the pretty significant money that goes into the food and beverage is usually our big driving cost. You would think then that the virtual attendee should be a lot cheaper, but the amount of money that's going to go into the technology to deliver a meaningful and engaging conference is kind of a wash with the food. So I think we're going to have a little bit of a educational and needing to tell that story when ticket prices come out, but I'm just doubling down on Jayla's stressing of the importance of sponsors like you. And another detail is, besides scholarships, we also pretty mightily defend the ability for nonprofits to have a booth at our conference for like $50, right? Like something that makes sure that just because you aren't, I'm a consultant, my other hat, and you can charge me a lot, but it's really important to make sure the nonprofits don't have a fiscal barrier to being part of our conference, so that's important to us. And then I guess I would just say, lastly, from the Colorado riparian side of the house, we represent a lot of the practitioners doing river restoration and watershed science, and the thing I value the most about this conference is that partnership with Casey's group and the people they represent, work for and with, and then same with Jayla. I don't know of another conference I can go to where I can get my technical information, share it and get it back, but also see how the policy side interrelates with the technical side, because I've become really convinced that we're never gonna make really meaningful change until we're firing on both fronts. And I think I know a lot of the people in your group fall on both sides of that, so it might be valuable to you also. So thanks again for talking with us and supporting in the past and considering us again.
All right, thank you. Let's go to the board for questions. Greg.
Hi, great. It's great to see you all here. Jayla, I've known your name forever, and I may have met you. I can't remember. And same Julie and Casey as well. So I'm an early advocate for the Colorado Foundation for Water Education, and I took some of the courses back in the day, and I'm so great to see how your organization's evolving. I'm going to encourage you to please do the teleconference aspect and explore that and make it work. People are making this work everywhere. This is the new way things are being done. And for one reason is that it saves a lot of energy in the long run. I think our own county has a double-digit savings for energy in this last year, and we're looking at that, and we think that's pretty important if we can reduce commute times. If people don't need to drive all the way over there and they can get what they need without, all power to them. Also, you might be able to stream them for a fee. A conference session might actually keep earning you money later. That's something to consider. I wanted to put you all on the spot and say, you're all involved in all these great organizations and involved in water and rivers. How many organizations like Pitkin County's Healthy Rivers exist, a tax-based, tax-funded fund for supporting things like this? And how do we get more counties to do that? We've had commissioners from other counties come to say, how did you guys do this? What did you do? I'm just wondering if there's a way that this organization, your organization, can support creating more funds like this one to make us all a little bit more robust in our preservation and restoration efforts for riparian areas and water. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. I'll just take a stab at that and say that I'm not really aware of any other counties that have such a focus on streams and rivers and waterways. But I know that in my community on the east slope here in the Front Range, a number of our counties do have dedicated open space taxes, and the open spaces that people seem to enjoy the most are the ones that adjoin a waterway, and so they provide community connections. And I'm most familiar with Douglas County, Arapahoe County, City and County of Denver, Weld County, Larimer County, Boulder County, they do have that sort of embedded in their open space program. And then also there is a statewide income tax check, what started as an income tax checkoff program, which is Colorado Healthy Rivers Fund. And that does allow people who have have a refund coming to them to allocate a portion of that refund to Colorado Healthy Rivers. And so we fund planning and projects. The Colorado Watershed Assembly is associated with the Healthy Rivers Fund, and we fund projects throughout the state from that local kind of grassroots constituency. But there's always room for more. Always room for more.
Okay, Patty.
Greg, we've done some reporting on, through our publications on some similar measures, and we related it to sort of this effort to fund Colorado's water plan, and if that was not sort of successful on more of a statewide level, which now we do have, Prop DD and the sports betting revenues, but looking at efforts like yours to fund water on more of a local level. And I know last year there were a couple of districts right in your backyard, River District, and then over on this side of the mountains, the St. Vrain and Left Hand Water Conservancy District that successfully passed, increases with their voters to, accomplish some of their goals more locally. I can look back at some of the reporting we've done and forward you some of those things, but this is also making me think of when we presented in front of just the board last month. Bill asked this question, I think, just and said that this is really a great opportunity, partly through, highlighting your role in sponsoring this conference, because I think the question was asked, why Pitkin County? Like, why would we be such a lead sponsor for this conference? And are there other organizations like this that are doing the same? And the answer kind of was, well, not really. And this is a way for you guys to be a leader and expose other people to this model and try to help them. You're really a leader in paving the way. We did have a great presentation a couple of years ago at the conference by Lisa Tasker from the board about your program and what you've been able to accomplish. And I think we'd really welcome, similar ways that you can interface with the conference to help tell your story.
If I could, Kelly, just wanted to, for Jayla, I'd recommend getting Rachel Richards, who is our commissioner, and I think the brainchild for this program, perhaps to do a presentation at some point, because she might light a fire under a commissioner in some other part of the state. And some of these mountain communities, the ski town communities, might actually have the funding in the tax base to consider it and understand the need for it with this influx of recreators moving into our mountain towns. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate the answer.
That's a great idea.
I was thinking we could try to make a presentation slot on that, or I was thinking when mentioned as a sponsor, there could be an additional, and maybe it's an and, none, or, but note that this sponsor is a model for others or something.
Okay, Patty, you had a question?
Yeah, it is my understanding. I was on the board when we passed the tax. It was enabling legislation from the state that allowed us to increase our sales tax to a certain amount. It's very minimal for water protection efforts. And Pitkin County at that time was the only county who took advantage of this provision. And I believe since then we're the only county that has this provision. And it was passed with an extremely high percentage of our voters, really high. So we were very proud of being able to do that. And then we're proud of our board that helps us utilize these funds, the Healthy Rivers and Streams Fund, and then allows us to do great things such as help to sponsor this conference. And so I am supportive of the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board position to support the $7,500 for this conference.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Bill, did you want to offer any?
Well, again, there was enthusiastic support by our board for this, and based on past experience and based upon what they said they were going to do this time. And so, with no hesitation on our part, and unanimous approval, so.
Thank you. Steve? Steve, go ahead.
So I have a thought about the people attending online. Doing an online presentation gives you the opportunity to greatly expand the number of people who actually can attend, because a lot of people can't do the travel, they don't have enough time or whatever reasons. And you potentially, I'm a little bit worried if you're charging the same thing for someone to attend virtually or in person, where if you did have a reduction in the price for attending the virtual version, you might get twice as many people signing up for that. There's probably a sweet spot that you could reduce the price somewhat and get enough additional people involved in it to make up the difference, so your income would be the same and your impact would be much greater in that case. So just
I think I spoke too soon. I probably made Casey and the real Jayla cringe by sharing that. That's a great point. It's a detail that still needs to be worked out, but I think that's good math.
And I hope you are enormously successful. This is going to be a hard year for people, irrigators with water. I know of 2 people who've already announced that they are getting no water this year from their reservoirs. One in Mancos area, one in the Roaring Fork Valley. So people realize the value of water. Those involved in agriculture really understand the value of water, and maybe there's a nexus that could be created for fundraising to bring in agricultural groups who are really involved in water to help fund some of this type of program across the state.
And thank you for that. We are very pleased to have the Colorado Association of Conservation Districts, the Colorado Ag Water Alliance, and the Colorado Agricultural Council all have submitted, jointly have submitted an abstract, because we do make a point of including, we know that agriculture is an essential economic and conservation asset that we have in this state. And we're very pleased that we get good participation and good speakers from the agricultural community that feel comfortable coming to this conference. And one other thing that I just want to mention, if time allows, is that one thing we learned last year is that virtual is great, but in-person is really important. So we hosted smaller, dispersed field trips. Rather than having one big field trip, we had 3 different field trips. We plan to do that again this year. Again, taking advantage of what we learned and offers from the folks at the Colorado Association of Conservation Districts. We hope to have at least 4 different small field trips dispersed around the state, so that people can attend the conference virtually, but then possibly get together closer to home and have a face-to-face, on the ground experience that is related to the subject matter of the conference as well.
Okay, I do want to keep us moving here because we're running at time. Go ahead, Steve.
One other thought, I'll touch on it real quickly. As an irrigator, we do flood irrigating on our place, and there are many small microclimates of wetlands that we create by flood irrigating that support a wide variety of different kinds of amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals that all benefit from these little wetlands. In a dry year when we can't irrigate so much, some of those little microclimates aren't there for the wildlife. So that's just another little tie-in to irrigated agriculture, providing wildlife habitat in you know, small little pockets across the state.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, I'm hearing support from the board on this, but I want to check in and make sure there's no alterations to the approvals that is recommended to us. Okay. All right, with that, thank you so much, and we wish you all the best of luck on your conference this year, and further discussion on how Pickens County can hawk our tax to other folks around the state.
Yeah. All right, thank you all so much. We look forward to working with you.
You too.
Thank you. We'll see you there.
It's a privilege. See you there. See you in October.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And I do, I'm sorry I haven't stuck to time real well, so I want to check in with Will and Emily and make sure that you guys are okay to continue on. That we made up time earlier, so we have the time to dedicate, but I want to check in and make sure you do as well. Good, okay. And Lisa, I'll go ahead and have you just introduce this grant to us, and then you can turn it over.
Okay, so Wilderness Workshop is joining us today, Will Rouse and Emily Kay, to present their grant application for to support the protection of wild and scenic designation on the Crystal River. The board had much discussion about deliverables for this project and continued the meeting until to another meeting on April 26th, where they unanimously approved the $35,000 request. So I will let Will take it away from here. We did develop some deliverables that were in your packet. So if there's any discussion on that, or if that's something that BOCC wants to talk about too, and I know Bill might have some comments on that as well. So I'll let Will take it from here.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Lisa, and really appreciate the opportunity to present our grant to protect the Crystal River with a wild and scenic designation. My hunch is this is something you all are at least somewhat familiar with, but I'll present a bit on what that protection is and our work as part of this larger group of folks who are all working towards it. So I'll share my screen as well. If folks have questions, feel free to jump in at any time. Great. And can folks see that?
We can.
Wonderful. So as I mentioned, this is a grant for $35,000 to protect the Crystal River with a wild and scenic designation. And really this is our effort to support excitement and initiatives that the community in the Crystal River has already begun, and is kind of continuation of work that in reality has been ongoing for a long time, but there's renewed energy and renewed opportunity to finally protect the river at this point. And our main efforts that'll be part of this grant are building the campaign infrastructure, so building the grassroots organizing, the communications materials that are required to achieve congressional designation. We'll be working with a diverse set of stakeholders, mostly within the Crystal Valley, but beyond that as well, to build support and consensus around support for a wild and scenic designation. We'll be engaging, of course, with elected officials, all the way up from local municipalities to our members of Congress, who will be key to passing a bill to protect the Crystal. And then we've already begun to, reach out and network and bring in a larger coalition of folks from throughout the state and even some national groups to bring added capacity and expertise to the effort to protect the Crystal. So I think it's worth just taking a moment to remind ourselves, or for folks who don't know, talk a little bit about what a wild and scenic designation is. And a wild and scenic designation is an act of Congress that protects rivers. The bill was, the original Wild and Scenic Act was passed in the late 60s on the heel of a dam building spree across the United States. And it was essentially Congress recognizing that certain rivers were deserving of protection and should be left in their free-flowing condition. And, you know, that's exactly how the Wild and Scenic Act would apply to the Crystal River. It would prevent dams from being built on the river, as well as out-of-basin diversions. So it would become part of this national network of wild and scenic rivers. As part of that process to designate a river as a wild and scenic river, the Forest Service, or the BLM, the land management agency through which a river flows, goes through a process to determine if all the rivers on their lands are eligible to become wild and scenic. And the good news is that the White River National Forest has already gone through that effort. And this map shows that study. And there's just a couple important things I think to point out on it. One is, you know, these are the federal lands that they've done the study on and that the river would be protected. There's 3 colors on the map. The red is in the Maroon Belt Snowmass Wilderness. That portion of the river would be a wild river, which is the most protective designation. Then there's a portion downstream of that, as well as the South Fork of the Crystal, that would be a scenic river. So, you know, the kind of the second level of protection. And then all the stretch of the river from Marble downstream along Highway 3 and Highway 133 would be a scenic designation. Still protects the river from dams, but, you know, obviously there's a state highway that runs next to it, and a wild and scenic designation, you know, wouldn't impact all those existing uses that occur alongside the river. And then lastly, you know, you can see that that purple color stops before the river leaves the forest, before it gets to the confluence with the Roaring Fork. And that's quite deliberate. That point is just above the first major agricultural diversion on the Crystal, the Sweet Jessup Ditch. And so this designation would protect above that, but of course would allow those agricultural diversions to continue below there. You know, just talk briefly about kind of the impetus or the reason why both Wilderness Workshop, I think Pitkin County, and residents in the Crystal Valley feel like a wild and scenic designation and protection of the river is so important. This is a visualization of 2 dams that could have been built on the Crystal with water rights that were established about 50 years ago. Unfortunately, are no longer there, but they would have been able to dam to flood the town of Redstone and the wetlands and upstream of the area around Placida. Thanks to Pitkin County, as I'm sure most of you know, as well as American Rivers and Bill Yocums, as well as some other residents in the Crystal Valley, these water rights that were held by the Colorado River District and the West Divide Water District were abandoned almost 10 years ago. And so that immediate threat is not there anymore. And in fact, that's a good reason why now is a really good opportunity to pursue protection of the river is you don't have an entity who's, you know, essentially trying to build a dam while you're trying to, at the same time, prevent dams from ever being built. So there's a good window of opportunity. I think, along with a lot of other folks, we don't feel like the threat is permanently gone. As you all know, as a West Slope County, the pull on water is always there and is likely to increase. You know, there's obligations downstream to the lower basin states as part of the Colorado River Compact. The Front Range is growing, and you know we'll always be looking for more water to pull to feed that population. And just as kind of the most recent example of that, I've included a headline from earlier this year about a reservoir that the cities of Aurora and Colorado Springs are trying to build or doing some studies on in Eagle County in the Homestake Valley. So folks still continue to look to the West Slope to build reservoirs. And that's why we and so many other people want to, you know, essentially take that option off the table for the Crystal River. I thought it was also worth highlighting how our work really aligns with the goals of the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board. And that's detailed in our grant, but just very briefly, I've highlighted of the board's 4 goals. You know, I think this work to protect the Crystal It certainly would maintain and improve the quantity of water within the Roaring Fork watershed by preventing out-of-basin diversions if we're successful. It protects the water rights for the benefit of the watershed. Part of achieving a designation, a wild and scenic designation, is that comes with a new water right to protect the river. So that's significant benefit. And then, because it prevents dams or out-of-basin diversions, it significantly enhances the ecological and recreational values of the river. And I apologize, I don't know if you all can hear, but there's a pretty big rainstorm in Carbondale. So that's good news for our watershed, but bad news maybe for my presentation. Just holler if you can't hear me as well.
You're still good. We can hear it a little in the background.
Okay, great.
That's okay.
All right, thank you. So, as I mentioned, there's a number of folks working on this. We think that Wilderness Workshop is especially well positioned to significantly contribute and lead in parts of the effort. A wild and scenic designation needs to be passed through Congress, and our organization has, decades of experience working to get bills introduced and passed in Congress. And whether it's a wild and scenic bill or a wilderness bill or mineral withdrawal, kind of the basic elements of those campaigns are the same: building really strong local support, organizing the community, helping to empower advocates, and educating the media and the public about what this protection would do and why it's so important. And so this slide, it has a wonderful photo from our work in the Thompson Divide, where we partnered really closely with the county, and then just kind of lists a number of the ways in which, I think we're really well positioned to do this work. One of which maybe is worth calling out: we're already working with several other groups on a wild and scenic effort for Deep Creek, which is just north of Pickens County in Eagle and Garfield County. And, that effort has given us really valuable experience. Colorado only has one existing wild and scenic river. And so the effort to get the second one is pretty significant. And our experience going through that process, which is still occurring, will make a really big difference, I think, for the expertise and experience we can bring to the efforts on the Crystal. Oh, sorry, one other thing I'll mention there. We're right now in the process of hiring a new position in part because of our work on the Crystal. We recognize that this will require a significant additional capacity for our organization. It's a priority for us, and so we're in the process of hiring a new position to work both on the Crystal and some other designation campaigns and efforts. So this grant from Pickens County will go a long way towards helping us to hire for that position, to attract somebody who's got really good experience working on similar initiatives and efforts. This is just a kind of a high-level summary of the work we'll be doing. Essentially, the deliverables that Lisa mentioned earlier. A lot of it is kind of very traditional campaign activities, but just to run through it briefly, because these are the deliverables we came up with Lisa and the board. We'll be conducting outreach to conservation and recreation organizations, private landowners, ranchers, local governments, and other stakeholders. As part of that, we're reaching out to groups like American Rivers, American Whitewater, the Pew Charitable Trust, to bring that additional national capacity to this effort. And then working very closely with the local advocates that have been dedicated themselves to this for many years and have really jump-started the current effort. A lot of work with the media and the public to develop the really important public outreach and educational materials so folks can really understand what a wild and scenic designation is, and make sure that the right information is out there, that we stop any misinformation. As part of that, we'll be working really closely with the media, generating professional photographs to kind of help build this compelling case for protecting what's a pretty spectacular valley. A key part of our effort is to create opportunities for advocates to advocate for this designation and to ensure that that's done in a strategic way, that it's directed at the right folks in Congress, and that everybody's kind of singing the same song, if you will. And as part of that is building this really extensive list of supporters that can be, we can draw upon when we need to push this campaign forward. I think I'll end there, and again, just thank the Healthy Rivers and Streams Board for all their input during our presentation to them. Thank the Board of County Commissioners for the opportunity to present on this. Obviously, this is an effort that the county is heavily invested in, and so we anticipate, working closely with the county and continuing the coordination that's already begun and the conversations as we both work towards the same goal. So thanks again, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Patty.
Yeah, Will, thank you, and Emily, thank you too. It is. Will, you just summed it up by saying that Pickens County is heavily involved in this effort. That was one of our things that rose to the top at our board retreat, was to pursue this designation again, this time successfully. So I think all the help we can get is important. I just want to make sure that we do coordinate and we work together. So we're very clear with the public that we're on the same page. So I'm supportive of this grant application because it's going to take all of us to get this done, and we need to have the funding there to do what needs to be done to get it done. So Kelly has been really involved in it so far. So I had talked to her briefly earlier to see how she stood, and she said that we just need to make sure we have the same voice when we go out to the public, and the public knows that we're on the same page. So, not to put words in your mouth.
I'll say my own words too. But other questions for Will or Emily? Francie.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Will, and it's such a relief to have the Wilderness Workshop really take the lead this way and become so active, not just proactive, but active about it, because as a member of SEVEPA and of the SEVEPA board and the Crystal River Caucus and the Wild and Scenic Group, it is exciting to have Wilderness Workshop step in with so much expertise and momentum. So thanks a lot, Will and Lisa.
Thanks, Francie. Thank you.
Steve?
So I think Francie just pointed out what could become almost an obstacle. It's an opportunity, but an obstacle to having a well-unified campaign, because there will be a lot of different groups wanting to participate and weigh in. And we need strong leadership in there. And whether that, maybe that will end up falling on Wilderness Workshop to provide that. Maybe it would be American Rivers, or who knows, as the campaign goes along. But in terms of having one group take the lead for the local groups, I think it would be wise to have Wilderness Workshop fill that role. Wilderness Workshop has worked for years on designating land as wilderness area. And there are similarities to getting wild and scenic designation for rivers to getting land designated for wilderness. And Will and I had this discussion before the meeting about how the wild designation for rivers is land that's actually in wilderness areas. It's the strongest protection for the rivers. But the scenic and the recreational designations for rivers under this act also give a strong measure of protection for the rivers. That's so important for keeping from having the major diversions out of the basin or a major dam built in the valley. So I entirely support this effort. I know it's going to be, always has been tricky situation before trying to get the different entities in the valley unified. So it's going to be really take everybody working together on this. I am curious if the Healthy Rivers Board is also going to be taking an active part in this in any fashion. In a sense, you in approving this grant to Wilderness Workshop are handing the ball to them to do the main carry and the heavy lifting on this, but I still see that the Healthy Rivers Board could take a role somewhere along the way in the whole campaign.
Bill, go ahead, please.
All right. Well, I certainly hope we're involved also. As a veteran of the effort that was pretty much suspended in 2016, what was so appealing to me about the involvement of Wilderness Workshop was that they could supply what we clearly did not have. And we did not have the staff and the ability to conduct the sort of outreach which Will just described to you. And I think that was a major, I know that was a major difficulty we had in that last effort. So that's why among the reasons I'm so enthusiastic about their involvement now. Also, since we are very interested and we're working on the same thing, and members of us are involved in the steering committee and whatnot, I'm really interested that our communications, the communications between Lisa McDonald and the Wilderness Workshop staff be really very, very open. It's very important for us to know what you're doing and to be up to date on it. So I hope there's a liaison appointed that for communication with Lisa McDonald, and that happens frequently. So.
Great, appreciate that, Bill. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. And what Steve was saying, I was going to say, really, I think that as we're supporting this, the Pickton County Commissioners certainly are going to be part of this campaign as well. And I can imagine all of us weighing in. I'm glad everybody is so supportive of this. I think it's really important, and I clearly believe Wilderness Workshop is the group to do it. I've seen looked at the scale, the judging of the various elements of this. I've seen some of the criticism about communication. We've discussed that already. As long as we're coordinated, I think the most vexing thing I'm finding as being a commissioner and not knowing what is going on with the staff or in an advisory board or another entity, because we are on the hot seat and we're the public eye of it in many ways. So it is super important that we all work together, and I have complete confidence that we will. And I was going to say, first of all, Emily, I hadn't met you yet. It's nice to meet you, at least online. And Will, I was thinking, is there an opportunity? Can we bring Connie Harvey out of retirement for to help spearhead this fight? This is going to be a big one, and her name should be on it as well. So I'm hoping we can get to her before she's retired completely, engage her, get her back. I don't know if she could do it or not. But anyway, I just wish you luck with it, and I'm very supportive.
Thanks, Greg. I think that's a great idea, and actually Emily and I are working on finding a time to grab lunch with Connie, so we'll fill her in.
All right, well, I'll just echo what Bill said. I think Wilderness Workshop brings the grassroots organizing infrastructure that is going to be essential here, and so I'm happy to support it through funding. And just for the board's note, you know, I have for my board reports, which our next agenda item is to report out on campaign activities for Wild and Scenic. So I invite, you know, Will and Emily if you wish to stay on to listen to that. But that's kind of our next topic, and one of mine that I'll be covering to bring everybody up to speed. So Greg, go ahead.
I had one more quick comment, and only that since 2016, Bill, when this last was attempted, I think that what we'll see is that the big changes are a huge influx of people recreating in the Crystal Valley and the entire watershed in Maroon Bell's wilderness area is being, as we know, I think it's been reported a 97% increase in recreational users. We also have a lot more residents coming into the valley. We've seen real estate prices go crazy. I think the pressure on our wild places has just gotten that much greater, and it wouldn't hurt to remind everybody that that's happening, and that's why this is so important. But also, you've got a really new demographic to reach out to, new residents and new visitors who might really want to get involved and take up the cause here. I'm hoping they realize what they have and work to protect it along with us. So hoping you've got some ripe new, you know, candidates to help make this happen.
Bill, go ahead.
May I say one more thing?
Of course, please.
When Will talked about the defeat of those existing reservoirs, pardon me? Will mentioned the defeat of the Placida and Osgood reservoirs, but there would be nothing to prevent anybody, probably including those same entities, for refiling right now to build the very same reservoirs. They'd have a different date. They'd have today's date instead of their 1955 date or what. But we're still so open, and there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, it can't happen. It won't happen." But I certainly don't. I certainly believe it can happen, and so that's why this is so necessary.
Agreed.
All right, great. Steve, go ahead, and we'll wrap up.
And to tag on to Bill's comment, there could be trans-basin diversion out of the Upper Crystal over into the Gunnison Basin, then over into the Arkansas Basin. That has been, those are the kind of schemes that have been talked about various times, and somebody could file for a water right to do that now, and it would be according to the Colorado Constitution. So it behooves us to really start working on this wild and scenic designation.
Okay. Lisa, will these grants come before us in any sort of formal resolution or appropriation or anything? Okay.
No, the money's been appropriated already, okay. And Connie Baker said this is the forum to do it in. So
okay,
yeah.
Okay, great. All right, we look forward to working with you guys. Will and I've already been talking a bunch. Look forward to more, and Emily's seeing you in person too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly. I'll probably listen in on the viewer and leave Zoom, but
okay.
Appreciate that heads up.
All right. And Bill, great to see you. And you're welcome to continue to listen in as well. So we'll move on then. We're back on time here to our board membership reports. I'm first, so I guess I'll just start us on Wild and Scenic, and we'll keep the conversation going a little bit. And so as most of you know, I think there's been kind of monthly meetings of a broad group of interested folks on this campaign, and it is kind of starting to take some shape. I think in March it was requested that folks sort of self-select to be on a steering committee, and from the broader group that was being invited to all the meetings to help, get the campaign organized. And so that group, I think, is about 15 people, and there's been one other meeting of that in April. And at that time, John Emmerich who had been organizing everyone, had kind of requested to take a step back from that position as he's the Crystal River Caucus Chair, and wanted to, I think, keep the integrity of that position. And so I had volunteered to step in and kind of act as the convener of the steering committee for that group right now. And so that involves kind of organizing the meetings, getting the Zooms scheduled, creating the agenda, organizing the minutes, posting the minutes, and facilitating the conversation. And then, you know, sort of seeing where we go with action tasks. And, you know, there's a lot of energy. I think there's all the folks on that are really anxious to get going and have work to do to move the campaign forward. So one of the first assignments was taken up by a wilderness workshop staffer, Julie Spilka, I don't know if I'm saying that right. And then Hattie Thompson from American Whitewater to work on messaging and come back with a consistent message that all the campaign proponents could start taking out to the streets to kind of drum up. Some additional activities, and I want to check in with the board because we had allocated $100,000 but didn't give a lot of direction on the spending for that. So I just wanted to check in with you all about how much input and detail you want and how that money gets spent. Some of the suggestions were to hire a neutral secretary that would take minutes, to identify some of those funds for communications, print materials, things like, letters and ads in papers, and possibly some consulting if we need to develop the message further or create copy and graphic design. Hiring a neutral facilitator, I think, is where there is great energy in the campaign to conduct stakeholder meetings over the summer and fall and really start to bring together everyone in the watershed, pro and con, to start talking about what designation could include, what we could agree on, points of disagreement, and have that facilitator, be someone who can run those meetings and ensure that all voices are heard and I think accommodated in a fair and open way. I've had conversations with all of our, I shouldn't say all, with our two senators' offices to let them know that this is a Pickens County Board priority and sort of where the campaign is at, and we'll continue to keep them in the loop. They are interested in staying on top of what's happening and also really observing that the process is open and inclusive and a true stakeholder process. So we're in the process of scheduling our next steering committee meeting for next week, and then trying to get a standing meeting scheduled, and we'll hear back about the communications messaging and hopefully get something out, and then start developing more materials and start talking about how we would recruit a facilitator. And so I want to check in with you guys. That's where the campaign's at right now. Happy to answer any questions, and also figure out just how you guys want to stay updated with that. Francie and I have both been active and present at all the meetings, and then also get approval to give staff for how we spend the money. So, and how involved you want to be in that, because I don't know how involved you all were in the past, but we've made this appropriation and there are needs. So with that, I'll check in with you all.
Yeah, thanks for the update, Kelly. It was great. I think we all needed to hear what was going on, and as it moves forward now, I think we want to be updated, and I'm speaking for myself and maybe for the rest of the board, I think we all want to have the opportunity to get involved if and when and where present, just so we can all be a part of this.
Francie.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not overlapping with what Wilderness Workshop is already doing with $35,000 that we're giving to them. So I would think that before we get too involved in hiring somebody to put out, to do public relations or community contact or something, we want to make sure that they're not already doing that. So not quite sure how we go about making that happen, but I know we did talk about that at the last meeting, getting somebody to sort of do that. But then Lisa said that they were going to get involved, and I thought it was at that same level. So it's just something that we need to think about before we start spending more money in the same area.
Sure. Other thoughts? I think it would be helpful to hear for this board to say that it's okay to hire a facilitator, because I do think that is the campaign's need, that as expressed from that steering group, to really get somebody in who can be neutral and facilitate these conversations. And it could take some time to get that person identified and on board.
To facilitate the conversations of the steering committee as well as intergroups?
And no, that would be for the stakeholder process.
Uh-huh.
Other thoughts?
Well, it sounded like that's what Wilderness Workshop was going to do, was sort of do that kind of communication with the stakeholders. And that's why I'm sort of confused now about.
Mm-hmm. So what I've heard is Wilderness Workshop will be hiring like a campaign organizer to help with, do the grassroots stuff of organizing trips and, doing some ad work and rallies and, outreach to folks and action alerts and things like that. The thing that I'm specifically talking about is a neutral facilitator who will be at the big community meetings to talk about this topic, and to start to negotiate, what the proponents and the opponents can agree on, what they can't agree on, and start to see what that path forward looks like by someone who does not have a position on the issue.
And so that would be at the steering committee meetings and maybe even before the BOCC and at larger meetings as well. I mean, would this person be hired to be at all these things? Would it be like a full-time job? Or?
Mm-hmm. So Francie, I think that's for the campaign to decide. What I took away from our prior steering committee meeting from in April was that it's for the community meetings, not necessarily for the steering committee meetings. Not necessarily to run the whole campaign, but to for that purpose of bringing together, the pros and the cons.
I just kind of jump
So
in.
that's
I think we need to have a broader discussion
developed.
on that. So we need to, when we have our next discussion on this issue specific at a work session, I think we should outline what we're thinking about the facilitator's role would be.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think, Kelly can't continue to do minutes and post website meetings, and, we need to be part of it, but we need to have somebody help with the organization of certain aspects. And whether, we need to sit down with a Wilderness Workshop, I think, and plan it out, because we don't want to overlap, because we want to use our efforts and our funds wisely.
Okay. And what I've asked for from Ken Newbecker and also from Will is to provide me with info as an example to share with you all and with the steering committee about the facilitation process that they've used over in Deep Creek to help bring in, and look at the conversations with the ranching community and landowners along that watershed as well. And so that would give us a point of like a specific example around which to have the conversation. Okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so stay tuned. For my other board membership reports, so APSHA, I think I've mentioned last time we were talking about standards for sellers. So there are some hot topics happening at APSHA right now, and the standards for sellers has to do with updating the regulations as well as the deed restrictions, and that's such about the condition of homes when people would sell their properties and what APSHA can help to facilitate, both sort of with carrots and sticks. And so we have agreed to do to do some immediate things where we'll update the regulations to require an inspection at sale. And to say that's already been happening. I mean, the APSHA has been encouraging buyers to get an inspection, but it hasn't been a required element. And so that's kind of most recently what we're looking at. And then we're just having broader conversations related to, you know, how do we incentivize people to keep their homes updated over the course of a 10, 20, 30-year ownership? And what do we require and who pays? You know, if there are life safety issues that are not suitable when it comes time for a sale, you know, who pays for those upgrades? Does it come out of the seller's appreciation? Does the buyer get a credit? You know, do they split it? How does that work? So those are the conversations that APSHA is really in right now on that topic. That has taken up, I think, the last couple meetings. And I will say there's, you know, Rachel Richards summarized it really well. I thought she said, you know, it's sort of like open space. At the beginning of the open space program, you spend all this money buying land, and then you have to start spending money maintaining that land. And that's kind of where we're at with APSHA, and you know, trying to figure out what that looks like, because you know, I believe that we have an interest in maintaining those properties in our inventory, you know, into the future for as long as they can be livable. So I don't know if Francie has anything more she wants to add on that discussion.
You know, just what I said before about how I'm hoping that this can be a more aggressive inspection program than it is right now, where it's just voluntary. Because obviously, if you have a serious problem with your building and you don't want anybody to know about it, you're not going to let it be inspected, and then we're going to come to the sale of it, and you know what's going to hit the fan. But so that's my take on the meetings, and we'll see where we go tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
But as always, Kelly, your summaries are very good.
Okay, thanks. And I wonder if this board, maybe I'll bring it up at the next future agendas, if there's any interest in having APSHA staff come before the board and just give facilitate a broader conversation or a more detailed conversation. We can check in if there's interest, or if you have specific topics that you want to discuss. We can do that too, because I never feel like this 10 minutes is enough for us all to get the input that you all are hearing and thinking about with APSHA. And then I'll just do CCAT really quick. As some of you may or may not know, the legislative session is being extended into the second week of June. Usually they're done by May, but because they started late, they are able to keep going, and the decision by leadership has been to keep going. And sorry, I'm just looking on, trying to find my updates here. I think CCAT's doing a great job. They're really getting a lot of bills moved forward. I'm on the housing subcommittee, and all of our bills are in really good places or have already passed, which is wonderful. So that includes the inclusionary zoning bill, which I talked to you all about, an annual report on affordable housing expenditure, which is needed, and then the extension of housing programs to folks who are undocumented has already been signed. And then they're working on some health, wildfire, human services, behavioral health bills as well. And then the big transportation bill, which I don't know if we've all touched base on. I know Patty's gotten some information on it, and Steve is familiar through CCI's work. But that passed the Senate this week, and so now it's going over to the House, where it has a bit of a better chance, an easier chance in getting through. So that really is transformational, probably one of the biggest bills of the session, and Pickens County has helped to support that. So I'll leave CCAT at that. And then there's not much to report on the roundtable, so we can move on to Patty.
Okay, I'm going to extend an invitation. ACRA's annual business meeting, I just got the link, so that's why I didn't give it to you guys sooner. is this coming Tuesday from 8:30 to 10:30. You need to register online. Anybody interested, would you like me to send the link on to you? You want me to send it to all of you? I'll
Sure.
send it to all of you individually. Yeah, I think ACRA would enjoy having a few more viewers there. The Economic Development District and Northwest COG meeting is next Thursday. I am working with Rachel Looney from the Economic Development District to try and bring a presentation from ACRA to be put before the Economic Development District members as far as the recent economic study that was done by ACRA on arts and culture. So Rachel and I are working on that. And as far as Basalt Vista, again, I keep getting these wonderful emails about which kind of plants they can plant in front of their front door. So I respond right away, and if they can rent a room. And again, John Ely told me that it wouldn't take much of my time. So he's going to hear from me again shortly when it takes most of my time. And then the funding, the TPR funding, we have a meeting coming up, and I've been in touch with Dave and Brian about that and in following the transportation bill. So that's a quick summary of what I've been up to.
All right, Steve.
So CCI is active on a whole bunch of different bills. I just realized today that there are legislative committee meetings on Friday from 9 until 3. And in the meantime, I had committed to spend some time until noon on something else. So I'm not sure at this point if Kelly and or Francie could cover until noon. I could be there the whole rest of the day then on Friday, this coming Friday. They shifted the dates around for the legislative committee meetings because the session was extended, and that threw my calendar all in whack.
I was planning on going at the 1:45, the land use meeting. What are you thinking about, Kelly?
Yeah, I can be there, Steve.
So it's they're doing the Thursday meeting starting at 9:15 or so, starting with justice and public safety and moving through. And they don't have ag on the list on at all that I could see, I think, because maybe there was only one bill they were working on, perhaps. So then the other big thing is coming up is the annual meeting in Vail, the first in June 7th through 9th. And I think we've got that pretty well worked out, where 3 of us will actually be there in person for part of it. And then Kelly, you're coming back on Wednesday. I guess you're probably leaving late Tuesday and coming back over.
Yep.
And then Francie and I will be there Wednesday morning for the CCI annual meeting. So this will be first going to a big in-person kind of conference for me in a long, long time. Hope it works out okay. Regional Transportation has a new website, and it's a new call-in center for Mountain Ride, which has been totally changed. I passed that on to Chad and Patty at the Senior Services to look at how they were messaging the Pickens County information to make sure that it was accurate. But the whole Mountain Ride thing, which used to be handled by Northwest COG, is now being handled on a centralized statewide basis. So it's a whole different system now than it used to be, and still developing still some glitches in the system. And this is for Medicaid patients and veterans needing transportation to go to medical appointments is the main purpose of the Mountain Ride. Vintage has not had any meetings lately, but I have seen Erin Fisher at a couple of statewide meetings because I think she is the head of the Colorado Association of area agencies on aging. So she's real active on the statewide level now. Club 20 has not had any in-person meetings, but they are also lobbying at the state capitol on a variety of bills, some of which go counter to what we are supporting through our other organizations. So they don't really poll the membership. They just have the staff kind of look at the policies that were passed, and then the staff decides whether to support, oppose, or monitor a variety of bills. So sometimes I think they get it right on their position, and other times they get it wrong, but we don't have debate on it at Club 20. It's just a staff decision. So it operates different than other organizations. Senior Council is meeting tomorrow, and this will be the first time we'll have our 3 newly appointed members will be all in attendance at that meeting tomorrow. So we'll have a much bigger group to meet together with. The big thing they're working on tomorrow is looking at the Aging Well plan and prioritizing what kind of activities that they would recommend to the senior services to be engaging in first in Pickens County, and what things could be done at a later date. So it's kind of, there's a whole list of goals and action items, way too much to work on at any one time, and so it's a matter of prioritizing those items. So that's all I have for today.
Thank you. Greg?
Okay, thank you. Steve, I was just thinking regarding Club 20, do you find, is Club 20 using our name and on their letterhead as supporting things that we wouldn't necessarily support based on their staff's call? That doesn't make me feel very comfortable. I wanted to ask about that, because it just seemed like, do we need to be taking a stance against this publicly so people know where we stand?
Well, they're not advertising that, calling out Pickens County. They're just advertising Club 20 as a broad coalition of 22 counties in the western part of Colorado.
Including us.
Which includes us, and it doesn't include all the counties aren't members. Some counties had dropped out at one point, but it's just representing the general interest of western Colorado, which sometimes runs contrary to what our county advocates for. And we are definitely in the minority side on different issues in Club 20, along with San Miguel County and Summit County is particularly being kind of the 3 counties out. I guess Route County too, oftentimes being on the minority viewpoint on things. It doesn't happen too often. Most of the issues, I think, we would concur with what their position is on it. But occasionally there is one that will really stand out as being, that we don't support that position.
Right. Yeah. I was just hoping that doesn't, don't find ourselves advocating with them something that we don't want to advocate for. Okay. Regarding mine, CC4CA, the most recent news from there is that they're sending out solicitations to commissioners across the CC4CA universe to lobby some of our local senators. House Bill 1162, an alert came out that single-use plastics and plastics waste. And I can send the link, and I will send you the links regarding who to call and what the position is that we're talking about regarding single-use plastics. Another one is advocating for local government grants for hazard mitigation. That's House Bill 1208. That just came out this morning. And then also I was signed up to testify on greenhouse gas emissions last week, but the meeting didn't go into public comment. They had something that didn't really work well with. You could make very brief, almost tweet-length comments, which didn't really go well since I'd prepared a long testimony. So that's the most recent thing from CC4CA. I know they've got legislative and policy committee meetings happening as well, and Kelly probably is tuned into those more than I am at this point. Regarding CORE, we have our meeting this Thursday, and the CORE meeting is going to be we're going to do a recap of the presentation to the city regarding the REMP funding re-up, and the strategy CORE is going to be working on next, of course, will be coming to the county regarding our REMP funds, and we'll have more presentation on that. CORE is also talking about revisiting the coal bed methane leaks in Coal Basin, which are estimated to be 1.5 to maybe 3 times or more conservatively the greenhouse gas emissions than our own population of Pitkin County puts out on an annual basis. So there's a huge potential opportunity to perhaps tap or flare or make energy out of this escaping methane gas from Coal Basin. That's one of the other topics. We're also going to be talking with CLEAR, which I think is really a good sign. They're going to be presenting on a Western network of like-minded energy groups, trying to create more of a movement. CORE and CLEAR haven't always been in sync over recent years, and so this is not only a part of an effort to create a network where we might work more in concert with them, but with other groups as well that are doing that sort of work. There's an awful lot on our agenda, including the board reports and the director's report coming up, and I'll have more to comment on after that meeting, which is Thursday. QQ, I haven't heard anything from QQ lately, and I don't know if Kelly's shaking her head. So we're about due, I think. Board of Health, as you all know, we've gotten to monthly meetings. Next Board of Health meeting would be, I believe, is it the 10th or the 10th of June? I'm almost anticipating that things are changing enough that somebody may ask for a special meeting before then, but it hasn't come up yet. Just regarding mask requirements, vaccination, as you probably all know, I am the new chair. I was elected chair by the Board of Health, and I'm grateful for their confidence and daunted by the public exposure, but we've already been through it, so I think hopefully it'll get easier from here. I think that, what we're all really hoping is that we can remain more in sync with the state so that people know what's going on and from county to county and throughout the state, and that we're not always swimming against the tide, which sometimes it feels as if it is. I do know that we're getting messages from our public health director, Jordana, about availability of vaccines. There's a clinic Friday afternoon for 12 to 15-year-old kids, and older, I assume, is it at Buttermilk? I don't have it right in front of me, but we just told there will be another clinic this Friday afternoon, and we can get that word is going out. Our vice chair is Dr. Krista Giesel, who was nominated and agreed to do it. I don't think she anticipated that, but she's game, and I think she'll do a great job. And as Marky Butler said, it's really good to have a clinician on the board, at either the chair or the vice chair. So we've got that, and I'm looking forward to working with Jordana and with her and everyone else. RAFTA, boy, what's happened with RAFTA? I think we have a meeting coming up. Or did we just have one? I apologize. I've got them.
We have a retreat coming up.
We've got a retreat. We had the conversation about the retreat. Retreat has been planned. It's going to be at the 3rd Street Center in Carbondale. I don't have the date right here in front of me. Francie, do you have that?
No, it's like July 28th or something.
Yeah, it's going to be a while from now.
Yeah, we just had the meeting. I think it was last Thursday. We had a meeting.
Right, thank you. And I don't have anything else for you on that presently. RWAPA, Root Eye Water and Power Association, we had our board meeting the other night, and we had a conversation about aquatic nuisance species mitigation program this summer. The contractor that was running it has not been re-engaged. So now we are actually contracting with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, who decided they'd rather have their people doing it around the state. So we're going to be working with them. But I can anticipate opportunities, perhaps, if you know anybody who wants to be an aquatic nuisance species mitigation person up at the gate. It's possible that there'll be calls out for hires on that. That's the news from there for now. Finally, no conversation with me with the BLM. I did write a letter to Kevin Warner last week. I've been in touch with him just over the burn in Collins Creek because I've got such a great view of it from my house that we managed to take pictures and keep a track on it. And actually, a week after that burn, there was actually a small flare-up the other morning, which we spotted and called it in, and they were very responsive. They didn't find anything, but we saw a plume of smoke that was concerning enough after all that rain. But they went up and checked it out, and it's all good. And after yesterday's rain, I'm sure it's out now. But nothing that was unanticipated there. But also, personally, I just wrote a letter to Kevin yesterday, and I think I shared it with John Peacock, regarding the translator system. Our Red Mountain translator for the radios is in pretty bad repair regarding power to it. And when the power goes out, we lose signals to radio stations. KDNK, for instance, goes out completely up here. It was only happening during snowstorms. Now it's happening in the full sunny day. It'll just drop off because their system is so old and worn out. Unfortunately, we need a special permit from the Forest Service for our maintenance guys even to go in and replace the solar panels or do basic stuff like that. And so after consultation with Jeff Kruger, I wrote Kevin Warner a letter and said, listen, this is really important. We just can't have our radio stations dropping out. And we really could use some help expediting this. And so he's received my letter. I haven't heard back from him. Who knows what good it'll do. But the idea is to get robust radio signals up here. The Colorado Public, the classical station from Denver often dropped out. So they moved that into town. They moved that to another translator in town. But meanwhile, KDNK's signal is so bad that most of the time we can't listen to it. And that's important to a lot of people. I've been getting calls about it in my neck of the woods. So that's my most recent dispatch with Kevin at the Forest Service. And then finally, the last thing is regarding fire mitigation. Looking forward to the conversation with Valerie coming up on the 8th, or on the whatever day that was going to be. And the most recent news there is that there's the group that does the goats is coming back into the valley, and they're doing fire mitigation with goats, which is a very benign, non-chemical way of getting rid of burnable materials. And so the next conversation may be about trying to bring the goats through. I'd support that. That's all I've got for you right now. There's more, but I think that's probably enough to digest for the afternoon.
All right, so your next campaign slogan, Greg for goats.
Goats, more goats.
Roasted goats, fire mitigation, roasted goats.
All right, Francie.
Did you know that a goat can reach 6 or 7 feet up into the canopy because they're the only animal that feeds on its hind legs, so they can get much higher up than we thought, which is great for fire mitigation.
Terrible for yards.
Gosh, I could go on about goats. I love goats, but
Well, we're going on about a lot of goats here.
So, Steve, hang on. Can we do Francie's board reports and then we'll come back? Okay, Francie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to report on the the Colorado River District because we're about to have a meeting with them soon, and Kelly has just sent out something about that. But I did go to the West Elk Loop celebration last week instead of going to the after meeting, and like you were saying, Steve, about going to the CCI thing, it was 50, 60 people outside, drinks and lemonade and hors d'oeuvres passed, and everybody was sort of shocked to find themselves in this situation that was very party-like, and it was at sustainable settings, and so they were tours around sustainable settings, and I got to see my old friends Brooke and Rose and catch up with them, and it was interesting. Dan Richardson spoke for a little bit, and he talked about what he thought they should go see in Carbondale, and then they gave out a bunch of awards for new byways. There's 2 new byways. One is like the back way from Pueblo to La Vida Pass. It's called the Legends, I think. And the other one, I have no idea. I can't remember. But it was a really interesting group of people. They've never really done this before. They were going to have something last year to celebrate I think it's their 30th anniversary, but obviously they couldn't. So they just decided to do it this year. And I really didn't learn very much about scenic byways, except for the new ones and the awards for people who have worked very hard. And the guy who's retiring, who was the head of it for a long time. And, there was a big push about how scenic byways bring tourists to your community. And my son Ty, who lives on the scenic byway, was like, I can't believe you're going and supporting that thing. It just brings more traffic down the road all the time. So anyway, it was a lot of fun to go to a party, and they started serving drinks at 3:30 in the afternoon, and I was like, no, I don't think so. It was just a really interesting thing. I didn't go to the next night, which was the expensive night at the theater in Glenwood, but it's a group of people, and mostly what they do with the money they raise and stuff is put up signs. So that's mostly it.
Thanks, Francie. Steve, go ahead.
So, tagging on to the scenic byways, they did a presentation a couple of years ago at Club 20, and it really tied into the messaging of the Club 20 Tourism Committee, which basically is a Chamber of Commerce type of thing to advertise the businesses that live along the Four Pass Loop, the scenic byway. If you view it kind of as a Chamber of Commerce thing, I think it's probably still important that we have a face and a voice, seat at the table for at least some of their activities, just to keep tabs on what's going on out there.
Some of the things they have accomplished, though, is or at least been involved in accomplishing, is not having buildings built on the ridges, the ridge lines along the scenic byways, and I think they do some work to keep them beautiful, so that they push for building permits to be limited in a way that is not going to affect how you're seeing your scenery when you're driving along. So I think they do some good work. I'm not sure that Carbondale or Aspen need a lot of increased tourism right now, but the businesses might disagree with me.
Okay.
So, Kelly, if
yes.
I could bring up real briefly, one open discussion item that I forgot previously, having to do with the Handy Drive and Prince Creek Road intersection. I forwarded the letter from Michael Chandler that he had sent to me about problems they're still having with, the entrance to Handy Drive, that Prince Creek subdivision being clogged up with cars. I sent the letter also to Brian Pettit, so more that we need to be thinking about next steps or possible solutions, because I think the bullpen parking works to divert some of the parking traffic, but then some people are still driving up to Handy Drive and parking there. and skiing or bicycling up from there.
I want to jump in here because I've been talking with Brian a lot, and I've been talking with Gary about it. And so I wrote to Brian and Gary right after I got Michael's letter, and I've had Gary's going to send out rangers. They're going to put notices on cars, and we're going to work with Brian to see if we can get some more no parking signs put up. But it's not just that they're choosing Handy Drive instead of the biking parking lot at the bottom of Stark Mesa. It's that there's overflow parking. I mean, there were 12 cars parked along the road next to the Prince Creek parking lot, which is, you know, it's our road. It's where we drive. And there's a lot of issues around the biking and the danger of the Flying Dog Corner and the parking at Handy Drive. And, you know, the biking up there has been promoted by Carbondale big time all over the world. And it's an issue. It's an issue.
I
It's
think
very, very dangerous.
we all got the letter. I did forward it on to the sheriff's office too. And they had already been in conversation, the sheriff, Brian, and Open Space and Trails. So, yeah.
Yeah. Brian's getting it from all sides. And so's Gary.
Did we need any additional follow-up, or do you guys feel comfortable?
They're on it.
I think they're on it.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Yeah, thanks for the day. I look forward to more good discussion next week. Everyone enjoy the rest of your week. Rich, was there anything else? See you joining us.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
No.
All right. Take care.
All right.
And thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you, Grassroots.